Do you love novels, but don't have time to read thousands of chapters? Imagine listening to your favorite stories anytime, anywhere, while driving, working, or relaxing. Here, you'll find premium audiobooks from Pocket FM, Audible, Webnovel, Wuxia, and more, all in one place. Every novel is a one-time payment, no subscriptions, no monthly fees, lifetime access. The full novel list and prices are in the description below. Once you choose a novel, just DM me on Telegram, WhatsApp, or Discord. After payment via PayPal, Ko-fi, or Patreon, you get permanent access to the audiobook on Telegram. And if the novel is ongoing, all future updates are included. Check the description, pick your story, and start listening today. Before we start the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. Enjoy, and let's go.
501, Chapter 501. Tanjiro, looking at Daki's neck that had been stretched and twisted into a bizarre shape, his expression also shook. Tanjiro naturally did not know that Daki could make her neck twist and lengthen at will like this. This also gave Tanjiro a new understanding of upper-rank demons. Upper-rank demons were indeed different from lower-rank demons and ordinary demons. When facing upper-rank demons, he could no longer use the previous common sense to treat them. This was also caused by the Demon Slayer Corps' lack of understanding of upper-rank demons. After all, there were only 6 upper-rank demons. It was difficult for pillars to meet them usually, so there was even less to say about detailed information. Hinokamai Kagura, clear blue sky. Hinokamai Kagura, clear blue sky. Tanjiro slashes out a rotating flame slash. Unlike dance is a circular slash that the blade swings out, while clear blue sky can slash out a rotating flame slash. There is an essential difference between the two. When the slash of clear blue sky cuts off a certain part of the demon's body, it will cause the demon to have a burning sensation, and the wound cannot regenerate in a short period of time. After Tanjiro changed his technique and used clear blue sky, Tanjiro's slash then turned into a circular arc all of a sudden, and at the same time, the slash twisted together with Daki's neck. When Daki's neck's twist and Tanjiro's rotating slash were synchronized, Tanjiro's blade then cut into Daki's twisted neck in an instant, and finally successfully cut off Daki's neck. Great! Seeing that Daki's neck had been cut off, Tanjiro felt a heartfelt relief in his heart. In the next second, there was a piercing pain in his abdomen, and then Tanjiro's figure fell heavily on the grass. Continuously using so many techniques of the Hinokamai Kagura, Tanjiro's body could not withstand the load either. All the muscles in his body became stiff and sore, like Mount Natagumo, but this time Tanjiro was much stronger than last time. This time the techniques Tanjiro used were all very powerful techniques, and during the Mount Natagumo incident, Tanjiro could not withstand it after only using dance. This was also the result of receiving Kyojuro Rengoku's special training. After all, almost half a year's time was not used to waste. This period of time also allowed Tanjiro's body to better adapt to the load brought by the Hinokamai Kagura, therefore Tanjiro could use the subsequent techniques of the Hinokamai Kagura. These techniques were also able to be used by Tanjiro under Kyojuro Rengoku's guidance. Daki, who had her neck cut off, revealed a shocked expression when her head fell on the ground, and also let out a somewhat eerie scream, and at the same time, Daki's body was actually trembling strangely. It was not known whether it was trembling because of anger or because of something else. Until Daki's head landed on the ground, Daki and Tanjiro, who had collapsed because of his body's condition, faced each other again face to face. "You little brat, you actually cut off my noble head, I will definitely not spare you," Daki said, glaring at Tanjiro with a ferocious expression. Tanjiro's expression was also not very good at this time, because Tanjiro's whole body was in pain, especially his breathing. Every time Tanjiro breathed at this time, his lungs would faintly ache. However, Tanjiro still squeezed out a smile, ridiculed Daki, and then said, "Your neck has been cut off now, how can you not spare me?" 502, Chapter 502. Daki then scolded, "Idiot. I told you a long time ago, even if you cut off my neck, I will not die. On the contrary, it seems that after you unleashed that level of attack just now, your body has finally been unable to withstand it, right? A fighting style like yours that overdrafts your body will only exhaust yourself to death." After Daki finished speaking, her body, which had lost its head, then picked up Daki's head. At this time, Daki looked at Tanjiro with eyes full of contempt. Hearing these words, Tanjiro looked at Daki, whose body did not show any signs of collapsing. With shock, the extreme incomprehension in his heart made Tanjiro ask, "Why? Isn't your weakness your neck? You are really naive. Do you think I would be silly enough to tell you?" Daki then ridiculed. Although Daki was not killed, the burning sensation at the neck wound made it impossible for Daki to immediately reattach her head. This also made Daki understand a little why Muzan Kibutsuji must kill Tanjiro. Just by relying on the fact that Tanjiro's attack could make the demon's regeneration and recovery not work, it was enough to become a hidden danger. "It's over. I will return this sentence to you," Daki said to Tanjiro coldly and ruthlessly. As she spoke, 4 more sashes grew out from Daki's back again. The 4 sashes were eager to dismember Tanjiro. Tanjiro tried hard to breathe, wanting to move again, but in the end, Tanjiro's efforts only barely supported his body. Seeing Tanjiro looking like he still refused to give up, Daki hated Tanjiro immensely, and at the same time, the 4 sashes behind her pierced towards Tanjiro. Suddenly, a sound of breaking out of the box sounded. Nezuko flashed out of the box like a sharp sword. That speed was as fast as lightning. In an instant, she raided in front of Daki, and then kicked towards Daki's head with a flying kick. In an instant, she kicked the head that had been separated from Daki and her body to pieces, and Daki's body also flew out in the powerful impact, and then rolled several times on the ground. Those sashes that were about to stab Tanjiro's head also missed because Daki's figure was kicked away. At the critical moment, Nezuko protected Tanjiro once again. At this time, the veins on Nezuko's face were bulging, her hands were open, blocking in front of Tanjiro to protect Tanjiro, and at the same time, she glared at Daki, who had been kicked away by her. Tanjiro, looking at the figure in front of him, could not help but mutter in his mouth, "Nezuko." Because Tanjiro had acted forcibly, as soon as Tanjiro finished saying these words, his eyes went black and he fainted. Daki's body, which had been kicked away by Nezuko, quickly climbed up. The head that had been kicked to pieces by Nezuko, leaving only half of her face, was thrown to the other side. Her head was destroyed again. Daki became even more angry. While the half of her head was regenerating, she then said angrily to Nezuko, "You bitch. How dare you make my beautiful and noble face look like this? You bitch who has broken away from the Lord's control. I will soon repay you 100-fold, 10-fold for what you have done." As she said this, Daki's body then picked up the head that had grown back again, and then immediately put it back on her neck, so that it reconnected with her body. Daki could reconnect her head and body. This also showed that Tanjiro's attack that made Daki's wound unable to regenerate in a short period of time had lost its effect. 503, Chapter 503. Nezuko did not give any response to Daki's words. This may be because Nezuko was biting on the muzzle, or it may be because Nezuko had lost her speech system due to the body itself after becoming a demon. However, Nezuko responded to Daki with action. It seemed that she was dissatisfied with Daki calling herself a bitch. Nezuko took the initiative to attack Daki. Nezuko's speed was extremely fast. She broke through in front of Daki in the blink of an eye, and then swung out a foot again and kicked it up. Although Nezuko's speed was fast, Daki could still keep up with it. The reason why she was kicked by Nezuko just now was because Daki did not take any dodging and defense measures against Nezuko's attack, because Daki only wanted to kill Tanjiro quickly at that time. But Daki was still a little slow. Nezuko successfully saved Tanjiro. So this time, when Daki saw Nezuko kicking over again, thinking that Nezuko wanted to repeat her old tricks, she could not help but become even more annoyed in her heart. "Take your stinky feet away!" Daki shouted unhappily, and then the sashes behind her, like sharp blades, then slashed towards the thigh of the foot that Nezuko kicked over. Nezuko's beautiful leg was immediately cut off by Daki's sashes when it was about to touch Daki's face, and then Nezuko's beautiful leg that had been cut off flew and landed on the grass next to her. "It's not over yet. I'm going to cut you into pieces of meat." Daki shouted angrily, and then several more sashes were thrown on different parts of Nezuko's body. Nezuko's body was then really cut into several parts by Daki, and Nezuko's incomplete body was also affected by inertia, and slammed heavily on the cliff wall on the side, and then embedded into the cliff wall. Daki then walked towards Nezuko, and then mocked triumphantly, "I thought you were so powerful. It turns out you are just a weakling who can use a little brute force. It seems that you haven't eaten people properly, right? How pitiful, being by the side of your demon-slaying brother, you probably can't eat people." At this time, Nezuko had lost her arms and lower body, leaving only a torso deeply embedded in the rock wall. Although Nezuko's body was very incomplete, she did not bleed too much. This was naturally because the demon's regeneration and recovery ability closed the blood vessels at the wound at the first moment, preventing blood from flowing out of the wound. In this way, she could maximize the vitality of her body. The reason why Akaza, who had his neck injured by Ryaji's demon god power, bled heavily was because the demon god power prevented the wound from closing in any way, and the blood flowing through the large artery flowed out of the wound in large quantities. And when Daki, who had her neck cut off by Tanjiro's scorching crimson mirror, did not have a large amount of blood gushing out from her wound at that time, this was also because the characteristics of Tanjiro's technique only prevented the demon's wound from regenerating, but did not prevent the injured blood vessels from closing. So there were still some differences between the two. Compared to that, Ryaji's demon god power was naturally more powerful. But later, Akaza successfully closed and sealed off the injured large artery. In fact, what Akaza closed and sealed off was not the place where the wound was located, but rather the part that was not affected by the demon god power. To put it bluntly, this kind of closure was actually rebuilding the blood network near the wound. It was not a stress response, but rather an active one. It took some time to complete this process. 504, Chapter 504. So, even if Akaza stopped the bleeding using this method through active intervention, in reality, Akaza's wound did not change in any way. And judging from the time interval for Daki to reattach her head, Ryaji's demon god power had a longer lasting effect. Therefore, the situations that Akaza and Daki suffered were different, so the resulting effects were also different. Nezuko tried to break free from the rock wall. Daki, seeing this, then said, "Your body has been turned into two halves, and you are still thinking of moving around. With your level of skill, you cannot regenerate your body in a short period of time. Although my attack cannot kill you, I can use your brother's Nichiren blade to send you on your way. You should be happy to die under your brother's sword, right?" As she said this, Daki's sashes then flew towards Tanjiro, who had fainted, and then rolled over the Nichiren blade that Tanjiro was holding in his hand, and then took it in her hand. A demon using a Nichiren blade to kill a demon, this was perhaps something that had never happened before. At this moment, Nezuko broke free from the cliff wall, her half-body fell to the ground all of a sudden. And Daki was already walking towards Nezuko, who was crawling on the ground. Just as Daki was walking towards Nezuko, Nezuko's incomplete lower body instantly regenerated. That speed was not slower than Akaza's or Kokushibo's regeneration speed at all. Nezuko, who had regenerated her lower body, quickly stood up, and glared at Daki, who was walking towards her. When Daki saw this scene, her figure suddenly paused. She was obviously frightened by Nezuko's regeneration speed. Nezuko's regeneration speed was undoubtedly slapping Daki in the face. She should have said that Nezuko could not regenerate her body in a short period of time just now, but now Nezuko had undoubtedly broken Daki's statement. After Nezuko stood up, her lost arms also regenerated instantly. This time, Daki was really a little uneasy, and immediately shouted, "How is this possible? Your regeneration speed can actually keep up with the upper ranks. What exactly did the Lord do to you? How much blood did he give you?" And Nezuko, who was reaching out her arms again, actually took the initiative to pull off the bamboo muzzle on her mouth, and revealed a strange smile to Daki. At the same time, a horn similar to a demon's horn actually grew out of Nezuko's forehead. Upon closer inspection, it could be found that Nezuko's body had become more enchanting and plump, and the most obvious change was naturally the chest. Daki, at this moment, felt a strong sense of oppression from Nezuko. "Impossible. How can you have the strength of the upper ranks?" Daki then shouted in disbelief. As soon as Daki's voice fell, Nezuko then took the initiative to launch an attack on Daki again. This time, Nezuko's speed was even faster. At the same time, it was still the same as before, another flying side kick kicked towards Daki's head. Besides kicking people, what else can you do? Seeing that Nezuko had launched an attack on her again, Daki roared with extreme dissatisfaction, and also made a reaction at the first moment, and swung Tanjiro's Nichiren blade to slash at Nezuko's thigh. Nezuko's attack was very simple, and Daki was an upper-rank demon with more combat experience than Nezuko, so Daki still easily cut off the leg that Nezuko had kicked over. Next is the neck. After Daki cut off the beautiful leg that Nezuko used to attack, she immediately swung the sword towards Nezuko's neck. 505, Chapter 505. But just as Daki thought that Nezuko's attack could no longer attack her, Nezuko's severed foot did not completely separate from her body, but was connected by her own blood. Almost in an instant Nezuko's leg was reattached again. When Daki was holding Tanjiro's Nichiren blade to slash at Nezuko's neck, Nezuko's foot, which had been reconnected to her body, had already kicked Daki's shoulder. Daki's figure was kicked and slammed heavily on the ground all of a sudden, and the Nichiren blade in Daki's hand did not successfully touch Nezuko either. Because Nezuko's kick and Daki's swing direction were opposite, so the direction Daki fell was opposite to the direction of her swing. Secondly, Daki was not good at using blade weapons, so after her figure was affected, it was even more difficult to hit the target. After kicking Daki to the ground, Nezuko actually laughed. That laughter was very strange, and also a little eerie. That laughter was more like Nezuko's triumph over kicking Daki. Daki was also a little at a loss. She had clearly cut off Nezuko's foot. Nezuko should have no possibility of kicking her. Soon, Daki had a speculation in her mind. Unless Nezuko's regeneration speed has reached a terrifying level, almost able to achieve instant regeneration. Only the upper ranks who are ranked higher can achieve this kind of regeneration speed. How can this bitch be stronger than me? Just as Daki felt a little unwilling in her heart, Nezuko, after kicking Daki to the ground, then stepped on Daki's back again, directly stepping a blood hole out of Daki's back. Ah! Daki immediately screamed miserably, and at the same time, her anger reached an extreme point, and she immediately controlled the sashes to launch an attack on Nezuko. You bitch! Get out of here! At the same time as Daki was being trampled by Nezuko, 4 or 5 sashes behind Daki, like sharp blades, cut off Nezuko's figure again. This time, not only the limbs, Daki also cut off Nezuko's head and waist together. Immediately, blood splattered from Nezuko's wound. The reason why Nezuko's wound had blood splashing out this time was not because Nezuko's severed blood vessels could not heal, but rather because these blood were the medium for Nezuko to reconnect her severed limbs and head. The reason why Nezuko could still kick Daki at the first moment when her leg was cut off before was because she relied on the soft connection of blood to keep her severed leg connected to her body at all times, and could reconnect it at the first moment. This could be said to be Nezuko's blood demon art. Daki, seeing Nezuko using blood to maintain her severed limbs, immediately understood how Nezuko had kicked her just now. And most of the spilled blood was used by Nezuko to connect her severed limbs, and a small amount of blood was splashed on Daki, who was being stepped on the ground by Nezuko, due to the influence of gravity. Daki's face and arms were splashed with Nezuko's blood, and Nezuko's blood then began to burn Daki's skin, and Daki was like she had been ignited. Even if raindrops kept falling from the sky, they could not extinguish those flames. Ah, what's wrong with your blood? Why is it burning? Daki screamed miserably again. This time the scream not only came from physical pain, but seemed to come from the soul. 506, Chapter 506. Just as Daki was being burned by Nezuko's blood, Nezuko's body was reconnected through the connection of blood again, and then Nezuko stepped on Daki's head and stepped it into the mud. Nezuko! At this moment, the voice of a man calling Nezuko's name sounded. Following the voice to search for it, they saw that Makio had already arrived with Inashuk and Hattori Kyujo. It was Inashuk who was calling Nezuko. Although Nezuko was a demon, she was also the only demon that Inashuk recognized, because she was Tanjiro's sister, and also the person Ryaji wanted to protect. Hattori Kyujo also had a relatively deep impression of Nezuko because of the death order that Ryaji had given last time, but Hattori Kyujo felt that Nezuko was a little wrong at this time. After Makio saw Nezuko, because she did not know Nezuko, she thought that Nezuko had also come to deal with Tanjiro. Inashuk, seeing Nezuko stepping on Daki, then continued to ask Nezuko loudly, "Nezuko, have you resolved the demon?" Makio looked at Inashuk somewhat strangely. She did not understand why Inashuk would talk to a demon. Nezuko's situation is a bit wrong, be careful. Hattori Kyujo then reminded Inashuk at this time. After Nezuko heard Inashuk's call, she could not help but turn her head to Inashuk, and then looked at the 3 people who had come. Also, just as Hattori Kyujo's voice fell, Nezuko suddenly pounced on Inashuk, and knocked Inashuk to the ground all of a sudden. After Nezuko knocked Inashuk down, she just wanted to bite Inashuk's neck. But Inashuk's reaction was not slow either. After being knocked down by Nezuko, seeing that Nezuko wanted to bite him, Inashuk then desperately propped Nezuko's chin with his palm. "Nezuko, it's me, Inashuk." Inashuk did not attack Nezuko, but only prevented Nezuko from biting him, and also tried to use words to make Nezuko stop attacking. Hattori Kyujo, seeing that Nezuko was really not right, did not have the intention of attacking Nezuko either, but rather placed the scabbard of the Nichiren blade on Nezuko's neck from behind, and then desperately pulled Nezuko back. Makio, seeing this, took the opportunity to take a Nichiren blade from Inashuk's waist, and then prepared to use it to cut Nezuko's neck. Makio's starting point was good, she just wanted to get Inashuk out of trouble, but Makio's actions immediately caused Hattori Kyujo to stop her immediately. "Stop. You can't kill Nezuko." Faced with Hattori Kyujo's obstruction, Makio said somewhat puzzled, "She is a demon. I know this, but you just can't kill Nezuko. If he could do it, Inashuk would have counterattacked long ago." Hattori Kyujo continued to say. Hearing these words, Makio gave up her previous plan, although she did not know the specific reason. "Tanjiro, your sister is biting people. Aren't you going to come and take care of her?" Inashuk then shouted loudly again. Hearing Inashuk mention Tanjiro, Hattori Kyujo then said to Makio, "Quickly go and wake up Tanjiro, maybe he has a way to make Nezuko quiet down." Makio, after hearing Hattori Kyujo's words, immediately ran to Tanjiro, who had fainted in front of her, and then tried to wake up Tanjiro, who had fainted. And at this time, Daki had already stood up again, and the flames that had burned her had also been extinguished. This was probably because Nezuko's blood had been burned out. 507, Chapter 507. Why are more people coming? Could it be that something has changed on Kokushibo-sama's side? Daki felt somewhat displeased in her heart when she saw a few more people suddenly appear. However, after seeing Nezuko holding back Inashuk and Hattori Kyujo, Daki felt happy again in her heart. Finally couldn't help but want to eat people. But this is also good, it has blocked a lot of trouble for me. This way I can go and kill your brother, you bitch. Daki could not help but mutter to herself again. However, feeling the pain in her face, Daki still instinctively cared about her appearance first. Daki could feel the burning of Nezuko's blood, which could affect the recovery of her wound. Daki first lowered her head and looked towards the ground. At Daki's feet, there was a puddle of water. The raindrops falling from the sky hit the water surface, rippling out one ripple after another. Although the ripples made the reflection that Daki saw distorted, Daki still relied on the distorted reflection to see the situation of her face. Daki's original beautiful face, under the burning of Nezuko's blood, the skin of half of her face had been burned away, revealing the flesh and blood inside. It looked very eerie. Seeing her beautiful face being destroyed like this, Daki's disgust and hatred for Nezuko increased a bit. Although it was not that she could not recover, Daki just could not tolerate every inch of her skin being harmed in any way, especially her face. Revenge on you will start with killing your brother. Daki already had a revenge plan for Nezuko in her heart. All of you go to die. Blood Demon Art, Obi/Manipulation, 8-layered Obi/Pulverize. Daki immediately activated her strongest Blood Demon Art, and then 48 sashes flew towards the location where Tanjiro was. "Kyujo!" Inashuk then shouted loudly. Hattori Kyujo's reaction was also very fast. At the moment when Inashuk opened his mouth, she then turned around and ran towards the direction where Tanjiro was at the fastest speed. Because at the moment when Inashuk had just opened his mouth, Hattori Kyujo had already sensed the dangerous aura behind her. The instinct that had been trained in battle drove Hattori Kyujo to react at the first moment. Flame Breathing, 5th Form, Flame Tiger. This time, Hattori Kyujo did not choose the defensive skill, Blazing Flame Vortex, but rather used the 5th form, Flame Tiger, which had a range attack effect. The reason why Hattori Kyujo did not use Blazing Flame Vortex was because she was afraid that the same situation as facing Kokushibo would appear. The technique could not be defended at all, and it would be disintegrated. So she used a strong offensive technique to fight back. Although she could not guarantee that she would destroy every sash of Daki, she could destroy some of them, so that Daki's attack would not be so dense. As Hattori Kyujo just reached out and stabbed fiercely, the tip of the Nichiren blade happened to stab on a sash that was rushing in the front. A powerful energy field was then generated around the tip of the blade and the cone-shaped tip formed by the sash. The movement of the other 47 sashes suddenly seemed to be blocked, and they suddenly stopped. In the next second, Hattori Kyujo's Nichiren blade suddenly burned with raging fire. Raging fire also rose behind Hattori Kyujo, and then those raging fire surged forward, and finally turned into a huge flame tiger, opening its bloody mouth and pouncing towards those sashes. That group of sashes was also bearing the powerful impact, and desperately drilled inward. It seemed that they wanted to break through the energy barrier that was blocking their progress. 508, Chapter 508. When facing Daki, Hattori Kyujo felt a strong sense of oppression coming. Hattori Kyujo could feel that if she unloaded her strength even once, those sashes that were like sharp spikes would pierce through herself, Tanjiro, and Makio. Under Hattori Kyujo's offensive, the sashes near the center of the attack began to burn, and the sash that collided with Hattori Kyujo's Nichiren blade was directly shattered. As that sash shattered, the surrounding sashes were also bitten into pieces by the flame dragon. Daki controlled the remaining sashes, mobilized half of them to change their trajectory, and quickly bypassed the gap that Hattori Kyujo's attack could not cover, and then turned around 180 degrees, launching an attack on Hattori Kyujo, Tanjiro, and Makio from behind. This time, Hattori Kyujo really had no way to do anything. Perhaps Hattori Kyujo and Makio could avoid the attack by dodging, but what about Tanjiro, who was unconscious? Taking Tanjiro with them to dodge, the success rate of dodging was almost zero. All of this happened very briefly, so Hattori Kyujo did not have time to let Makio take the unconscious Tanjiro away from Daki's attack range first. And Inashuk was still fighting hand-to-hand with Nezuko at this time, because Inashuk did not want to attack Nezuko, so Inashuk was in a state where he could not use his strength at this time. In terms of strength alone, Inashuk was really no match for Nezuko, who had been deeply demonized. At this time, Nezuko's saliva kept flowing from her mouth. It seemed that she was very eager for flesh and blood. At the same time, because there was no Hattori Kyujo to hold her back, Nezuko's mouth was about to touch Inashuk's neck. If Zenitsu was here, that guy would definitely be able to suppress Nezuko. Inashuk could not help but miss Zenitsu Agatsuma in his heart. Nezuko, you were the one who attacked first, so don't blame me. Inashuk, unable to hold on, then grabbed Nezuko's chest fiercely. Although this move was a bit shameless, Inashuk had no choice either. However, it must be said that this move was indeed very effective. Inashuk's fierce grab really made Nezuko stand up. Then she tightly grabbed Inashuk's wrist. It seemed that she planned to break Inashuk's hand. Before Inashuk could be happy, the pain in his wrist made Inashuk let go of his hand all of a sudden. Good opportunity. Inashuk then suddenly got up, and then slammed his forehead heavily towards Nezuko's head. At the same time, several lightning flashes passed under the dark cliff. The 6 sashes that were controlled by Daki, and had gone around behind Hattori Kyujo, and were about to touch Hattori Kyujo, Tanjiro, and Makio suddenly broke. The broken sashes immediately became soft because they had lost contact with Daki herself, and then slowly floated in mid-air. At the critical moment, Zenitsu Agatsuma's timely appearance helped everyone resolve the deadly situation. At this time, Zenitsu Agatsuma, carrying Suma on his back, stood 2 meters away behind Hattori Kyujo. Although Zenitsu Agatsuma had cut off a section of the sashes, the other part of the sashes still maintained their offensive. No one can stop me from protecting Nezuko and the beauties of the Demon Slayer Corps. Thunder breathing first form, thunderclap and flash, 6-fold. Zenitsu Agatsuma had no intention of letting Suma off his back at all. After standing still, he directly activated thunderclap and flash, 6-fold again. Because if Zenitsu Agatsuma did not move again, Suma would be attacked by the sashes that were still maintaining their offensive. Even with a person on his back, Zenitsu Agatsuma was still not affected much. His speed was still as fast as lightning. 509, Chapter 509. The reason why Zenitsu Agatsuma had arrived after Inashuk was because Zenitsu Agatsuma had woken up from his coma not long after Inashuk and the others had left. After waking up, Zenitsu Agatsuma learned from Suma that Inashuk had gone to support Ryaji and Tanjiro. Zenitsu Agatsuma was even more worried about Nezuko, so Zenitsu Agatsuma carried Suma on his back, and under Suma's general guidance, he had been chasing after Inashuk. Carrying such a top-notch beauty on his back, Zenitsu Agatsuma was naturally like he had taken stimulants. Even if he was not in a sleeping state, he was still very powerful. When Zenitsu Agatsuma used Thunderclap and Flash, sixfold, Zenitsu Agatsuma's figure first broke forward, relieving the pressure on Hattori Kyujo again, and then his figure folded back again, and then cut off Daki's sashes again. After 5 strikes were launched, only a few scattered sashes were left out of Daki's 48 sashes. Zenitsu Agatsuma's 6th strike was towards Daki. So fast. Daki could not keep up with Zenitsu Agatsuma's speed at all. At the same time as she was surprised, her neck was then cut off by Zenitsu Agatsuma's extremely fast slash. After Zenitsu Agatsuma's figure stopped in the end, Zenitsu Agatsuma suddenly knelt on the ground. At first glance, it seemed that he was being pressed down by Suma, but in reality, the load on Zenitsu Agatsuma's legs had reached its limit, his feet had been completely numb, and his muscles had also become uncontrollable. Thunderclap and Flash, sixfold was powerful, but it could not be used without restraint either, because sixfold was not just breaking forward in one direction, but rather could arbitrarily change direction and angle like lightning. Therefore, changing the direction of attack and flashing at an extremely fast speed undoubtedly put a huge load on the legs. In addition, Zenitsu Agatsuma was carrying a person on his back this time. The increase in self-weight undoubtedly made the burden on Zenitsu Agatsuma's feet even heavier. Suma, seeing Zenitsu Agatsuma's figure kneeling heavily on the ground, immediately let go of Zenitsu Agatsuma, and then broke away from Zenitsu Agatsuma, and anxiously asked, "Are you okay, little handsome guy?" "I'm okay. I killed the demon. It's already safe," Zenitsu Agatsuma said very bravely in front of Suma. After all, Zenitsu's character was like this: no matter how unbearable, he could not lose the masculine spirit he should have in front of women, especially beautiful women. Suma looked at Daki, who had her head cut off, and also felt relieved in her heart, and also saw Zenitsu Agatsuma's power. "Zenitsu, stop flirting, Nezuko is out of control. Come and help." Inashuk then interrupted Zenitsu Agatsuma and Suma's conversation at this time. Although Inashuk had used the breast-grabbing attack and headbutt attack to buy himself a moment of respite before, this made Nezuko even more angry. Nezuko launched a fierce offensive against Inashuk even more brutally, and the situation suddenly fell into another situation. Inashuk could only be forced to meet Nezuko's attack, although Inashuk only attacked Nezuko's torso, and did not attack Nezuko's vitals at all. Inashuk found that such an attack was completely ineffective against Nezuko, and he could not make Nezuko lose her mobility at all. And Inashuk also did not dare to rashly attack Nezuko's neck except for attacking Nezuko's torso, because if he accidentally killed Nezuko, then it would be difficult to explain to Tanjiro and Ryaji. 510, Chapter 510. The most important reason why Inashuk could hit Nezuko was not that Nezuko was not strong enough, but rather that Nezuko's fighting style was very wild. As long as it was an attack that did not threaten her life, Nezuko would not deliberately dodge it, but rather attack while enduring Inashuk's counterattack. It had a feeling of hurting the enemy 1,000 and hurting oneself 800, but as a demon, Nezuko would basically not have any self-damage. If Inashuk really intended to attack Nezuko's neck, as a demon, Nezuko would definitely dodge. It was really hard to say whether Inashuk could hit Nezuko's neck in the situation where Nezuko was dodging. After knowing that non-fatal attacks were ineffective against Nezuko, Inashuk simply gave up attacking, and only focused on dodging Nezuko's attacks. With the help of the flexibility of his body, although Inashuk might not be as fast as Nezuko in terms of speed, he could still avoid Nezuko's attacks well with the help of the flexibility of his body. Inashuk's request for help made Zenitsu Agatsuma immediately look in Inashuk's direction. It was at this time that Zenitsu Agatsuma noticed the out-of-control Nezuko. Zenitsu Agatsuma wanted to go up and help very much, but his legs were no longer listening to him, and he could not drive them at all. "Inashuk, I used too much force just now, and I can't move for the time being. Take it easy. Don't hurt Nezuko." Zenitsu Agatsuma then replied to Inashuk, telling Inashuk about his situation. Hearing these words, Inashuk felt extremely aggrieved in his heart. If it was another demon, Inashuk would have killed them long ago. Hattori Kyujo, who had freed her hands, immediately went to support Inashuk. Hattori Kyujo's support made Nezuko become vigilant all of a sudden, and took the initiative to create distance from Inashuk. It seemed that she had the intention of running away. Zenitsu Agatsuma, who had a keen mind, quickly noticed this, and immediately said to Hattori Kyujo, retreat. This will scare Nezuko away. If Nezuko was scared away, without restraint, she would really start eating people. At that time, even if Tanjiro was unwilling, he would have to kill Nezuko. Zenitsu did not want this kind of thing to happen. Hattori Kyujo, after being called by Zenitsu Agatsuma, immediately stopped, and also discovered Nezuko's vigilant behavior. It seemed that she had new plans for the changes in the situation. So, Hattori Kyujo carefully retreated slowly, and also gave Inashuk a look that said you can only rely on yourself. Inashuk felt quite helpless in his heart, and finally had to restrain Nezuko by himself. Quickly wake up Tanjiro, even if you slap him, you have to wake him up. Otherwise, if you force me, I will really have to kill my own relative for the greater good. Inashuk then urged Hattori Kyujo to wake up Tanjiro quickly. Nezuko, seeing that Hattori Kyujo had retreated, then launched an attack on Inashuk again. It seemed that she was retaliating for Inashuk grabbing her chest. Hattori Kyujo also came to Tanjiro's side, and listened to Inashuk's words, and really grabbed Tanjiro from the ground without hesitation, and slapped him twice directly. Wake up quickly. Your sister is out of control. You have to wake up and take care of your sister. Hattori Kyujo said to Tanjiro after slapping him twice. The reason why Hattori Kyujo took action so decisively was because she could not attack Nezuko, and could only watch helplessly. This made Hattori Kyujo very uncomfortable. It was fine if Nezuko did not cause trouble. Hattori Kyujo could still pretend that Nezuko did not exist, but now that she had caused trouble, Hattori Kyujo immediately became disgusted with Nezuko. 511, Chapter 511. Just as everyone was relaxed because Daki's neck had been cut off, Daki's head, which had fallen near Zenitsu Agatsuma's position, suddenly jumped up from the ground. Just as Zenitsu Agatsuma noticed the abnormality, before he had time to make any dodges, Daki's head, which had been cut off by Zenitsu Agatsuma, had already opened its sharp teeth and bitten Zenitsu Agatsuma's neck tightly. Zenitsu Agatsuma subconsciously reached out to pull Daki's head, but found that he could not pull it off at all. Daki's bite was very tight. If he forcibly pulled it off, it was estimated that he would take a piece of meat from his neck. Suma was also frightened by this sudden change, and looked at Zenitsu Agatsuma with a panicked and anxious expression. Quickly go to a safe place. This guy is not dead yet. Zenitsu Agatsuma endured the pain in his neck and shouted to Suma. Although Zenitsu Agatsuma did not know why Daki had not died after her neck was cut off, the situation was like this now. But what about you? Suma said with great concern. And the changes that Zenitsu Agatsuma encountered immediately attracted Hattori Kyujo's attention. As soon as Suma's voice fell, Daki's body had already thrown 2 sashes towards Zenitsu Agatsuma and Suma. Hattori Kyujo immediately threw Tanjiro aside, and then rushed to support Zenitsu Agatsuma at the fastest speed. Flame breathing, second form, rising scorching sun. In the next second, Hattori Kyujo made an upward slash from bottom to top, and then cut off the sashes that were stabbing towards Zenitsu Agatsuma and Suma. Go quickly. Hattori Kyujo urged Suma again. With Hattori Kyujo's intervention, Suma then retreated to Makio's position with peace of mind. Kyujo, quickly help me get this disgusting head off. She's sucking my blood. Zenitsu Agatsuma then asked Hattori Kyujo for help. But when Hattori Kyujo wanted to help Zenitsu Agatsuma get out of trouble, Daki's body had already stuck to Hattori Kyujo's face, and then she used a knee strike to hit Hattori Kyujo heavily. Hattori Kyujo had no choice but to give up helping Zenitsu Agatsuma get out of trouble, and then stabbed towards Daki's knee that was kicking over with 1 slash. It was just that Hattori Kyujo's stab did not completely block Daki's knee strike. Daki's knee strike still hit Hattori Kyujo despite being pierced by the blade. Hattori Kyujo's figure was kicked and slid out for several meters. After Hattori Kyujo's figure stood still, a trace of blood could not help but overflow from the corner of Hattori Kyujo's mouth. At the same time, Daki's body made a spin, and a sash behind her then swung towards Zenitsu Agatsuma under the spin of her body. And when Zenitsu Agatsuma realized that the situation was not right, he had already instinctively urged his feet to stand up. When Daki launched an attack on Zenitsu Agatsuma, Zenitsu Agatsuma forcibly used Thunderclap and Flash. Because it was used in a very hasty situation, this Thunderclap and Flash did not have much damage power. Zenitsu Agatsuma only flashed forward for a distance. This was also Zenitsu Agatsuma's purpose. Zenitsu Agatsuma's Thunderclap and Flash this time was not to launch an attack, but just to create distance from Daki's body. The rapid change of Zenitsu Agatsuma's position made Daki's attack miss, but Zenitsu Agatsuma almost did not stand firm after his figure had just been in battle, but in the end Zenitsu Agatsuma still supported his figure, and did not kneel down again. Hattori Kyujo reacted very quickly. As soon as Zenitsu Agatsuma flashed in front of her, she then stabbed towards Daki's head that was biting Zenitsu Agatsuma's neck. 512, Chapter 512. Flame Breathing, Fifth Form, Flame Tiger. This stab was not a simple stab, but rather a stab that activated a technique. In the next moment, Hattori Kyujo's flaming Nichiren blade stabbed into Daki's head. In an instant, Daki's head burned up, and at the same time as the tip of the blade pierced out of Daki's head, raging flames gushed out from the tip of the blade, and then turned into a flame tiger and pounced towards Daki's body. This time, in order to prevent accidentally hurting Zenitsu Agatsuma, Hattori Kyujo gathered all the rhythm of the flame on the blade, concentrating the attack range on one point. Thus, Daki's head would be ignited by the raging fire all of a sudden. After the blade pierced out, the large amount of flame rhythm gathered on the blade was then released. The release was delayed for a period of time compared to the original release. Although Hattori Kyujo tried her best not to hurt Zenitsu Agatsuma, the high temperature emitted by the raging flames still scorched Zenitsu Agatsuma. Fortunately, it was raining now, and he was soaked in the rain. His whole body was in a wet state, which allowed Zenitsu Agatsuma to avoid being indirectly burned. And Daki's head just happened to be stuck on Hattori Kyujo's blade. The large amount of flame rhythm on Hattori Kyujo's blade was undoubtedly burning every cell of Daki's head frantically. Even if Daki did not want to let go, she could no longer control it in the face of the high-temperature melting sensation in her brain cavity. The only thing Daki could do was to give up that head, and regenerate a new head again. This was also a way to immediately cut off the pain. And after Daki's head was forced to let go, Zenitsu Agatsuma's neck then kept bleeding, and at the same time, he could see very deep tooth marks on it. The flesh in that area was almost bitten off by Daki. Zenitsu Agatsuma did not touch the wound at the first moment, but rather stopped the bleeding through breathing at the first moment. And Daki's body, facing the pouncing flame tiger, also chose to retreat, and did not confront it head-on. At this moment, Tanjiro was finally awakened by Makio's call. Finally woke up. Makio felt relieved in her heart. The situation was so urgent now. If Tanjiro did not wake up again. Nezuko. The first thing Tanjiro was concerned about after waking up was Nezuko. The first thing he said after opening his eyes was to say Nezuko's name. Immediately, Tanjiro looked around, and after seeing Nezuko and Inashuk fighting together, before Makio could speak, Tanjiro had already pounced towards Nezuko. Tanjiro's approach did not seem to arouse Nezuko's vigilance. It was not until Tanjiro locked Nezuko tightly from behind that Nezuko reacted, and struggled violently. Inashuk, seeing this, was immediately liberated from his aggrieved in his heart, and then said to Tanjiro, "Tanjiro, you bastard, you finally woke up. Nezuko is left to you. You two siblings can play slowly. I'm going to support Kyujo and Zenitsu." After speaking, Inashuk quickly withdrew and left. Nezuko, seeing that Inashuk had run away, then struggled even more fiercely. Tanjiro almost let go, allowing Nezuko to break free. Also because of Nezuko's violent struggle, Tanjiro also fell to the ground with Nezuko. "Nezuko, what's wrong with you? This is not you. Calm down quickly. You can't attack humans, you know. Master Urokadake, Ryaji-senpai, and Gianai Aizen and I, all took our lives to guarantee you." Tanjiro desperately controlled Nezuko, and tried to use words to make the out-of-control Nezuko calm down. 513, Chapter 513. "Nezuko, you can do it. Haven't you always done it before? You can definitely do it now too." Although Tanjiro was trying very hard to appease the out-of-control Nezuko, Nezuko at this time did not listen to Tanjiro's words at all. Now that Nezuko was not listening to him at all, Tanjiro, who was at a loss, could not help but think of Ryaji. If Ryaji was here, he would definitely have a way to make Nezuko quiet down. As soon as he thought of Ryaji, Tanjiro felt sincerely worried for Ryaji in his heart. He did not know how the situation was on Ryaji's side. Uzui Tengen was not here. Could it be that he had gone to support Ryaji? And Makio knew that she could not do anything on the main battlefield, so she called Suma to help Tanjiro control Nezuko together. In this way, Inashuke, Hattori Kyujo, and Zenitsu Agatsuma could also fight more attentively. Although Suma did not understand the situation very well, seeing that Tanjiro and everyone did not intend to harm Nezuko, and combining it with Tanjiro's words of appeasing Nezuko, she could also guess something. Otherwise, facing a demon, as a demon slayer of the Demon Slayer Corps, there was no reason not to kill her. Tanjiro, seeing that Makio and Suma had come to help, then kindly reminded, "Be careful, don't be bitten by Nezuko, you must not give Nezuko a chance to hurt people." Makio and Suma nodded, and then the two helped Tanjiro hold down Nezuko's limbs. With the help of Makio and Suma, Tanjiro was also a little relieved. And Inashuke, who had freed himself, felt extremely comfortable. His body had held back a breath waiting to be vented. "Pig assault. This great me is coming too," Inashuke said excitedly, and at the same time, he broke through towards Daki quickly. Daki had just regenerated her head not long ago at this time. Seeing another Inashuke who did not know whether to live or die rushing towards her, she then immediately launched an attack on Inashuke. "Inashuke, this guy is not afraid of being beheaded, be careful to deal with her." Zenitsu Agatsuma then reminded Inashuke, who was raiding towards Daki. This time, Daki's attack no longer took the strong attack route, but rather took the control route. Because Daki found that the strong attack route made it difficult to effectively attack the target, so Daki also cleverly changed her fighting ideas. The sashes, under Daki's control, twisted quickly and irregularly, and quickly wrapped around Inashuke's body and limbs. Inashuke, seeing those nimble sashes coiling around him, knew that his breakthrough was blocked. Inashuke then immediately launched an offensive. Beast breathing, fifth Fang, crazy cutting. In midair, Inashuke suddenly waved the two Nichiren blades in his hands wildly around him. Just as Inashuke swung his blades, those sashes coiling around Inashuke quickly tightened. But Inashuke's attack had already been released, so at the moment when the sashes tightened, Inashuke's serrated blade was easier to tear Daki's sashes into pieces of cloth than a full-edged blade. And as soon as Inashuke's attack stopped, many sashes then wrapped around Inashuke again. It was as if Inashuke had the magic power to attract these sashes. These things are really annoying. They twist around like earthworms. After landing, Inashuke could only helplessly jump back to create distance, and at the same time, he swung his blades to cut those sashes that were approaching him. 514, Chapter 514. Kyujo, do you know how to kill a demon who is not afraid of being beheaded? Zenitsu Agatsuma did not attack blindly, but rather discussed countermeasures with Hattori Kyujo. Hearing these words, Hattori Kyujo shook her head. She was also encountering a demon who was not afraid of being beheaded for the first time. If Captain Ryaji was here, he should know how to deal with it. Hattori Kyujo then said. Hearing Hattori Kyujo mention Ryaji, Zenitsu Agatsuma then noticed that Ryaji was not with Tanjiro. Then where did Ryaji-senpai go? Why isn't he with Tanjiro? Zenitsu Agatsuma then asked himself in confusion again. Perhaps he is being held back by other upper-rank demons. Hattori Kyujo said her guess. We were able to encounter Kokushibo's ambush, then there must be more than one demon dealing with Captain Ryaji and Tanjiro. Hattori Kyujo continued to say. Just as Zenitsu Agatsuma and Hattori Kyujo were discussing, Inashuke was currently engaged in a fierce battle with Daki's sashes. Inashuke waited for support for a long time, and also did not see Hattori Kyujo and Zenitsu Agatsuma taking the opportunity to attack Daki again, so he shouted dissatisfiedly at Hattori Kyujo and Zenitsu Agatsuma, who were indifferent. Good guys, I am fighting to the death here, but you are flirting. Aren't you going to come at that earthworm woman and kill her? We are analyzing the earthworm woman's weakness. The earthworm woman is not afraid of being beheaded. Before knowing her weakness, my attacks are all in vain. Zenitsu Agatsuma answered Inashuke, who was fighting hard with Daki, very seriously. Then have you analyzed anything? Inashuke then asked. Not yet. Zenitsu Agatsuma answered. If you haven't figured it out, then think while fighting. Only launching an attack may allow the earthworm woman to reveal a flaw. Inashuke, seeing that Zenitsu Agatsuma had not analyzed anything, then said his thoughts, and said to Zenitsu Agatsuma and Ina shook with a commanding tone. Hearing these words, Hattori Kyujo also felt that what Ina shook said was right, so she no longer continued to talk nonsense with Zenitsu Agatsuma. While Ina shook was entangled with Daki's sashes, Hattori Kyujo then launched an attack on Daki's main body. Flame breathing, 9th form, Purgatory. Hattori Kyujo knew that the opportunity was rare, so she then immediately activated the strongest technique of flame breathing, Purgatory. However, compared to the Purgatory that Ryaji and Ryaji released, the momentum was much weaker, and at the same time, the situation where the moisture within a range of tens of meters around was evaporated instantly did not appear. The Purgatory that Hattori Kyujo released only evaporated the moisture near the action trajectory, and could not yet evaporate the raindrops falling from the sky. Hattori Kyujo used Purgatory to break through to Daki's face in an instant, and this time the part that Hattori Kyujo attacked was not the neck, nor the head, but rather the heart. When she did not know Daki's weakness, she could only try to attack different parts. And just as Hattori Kyujo's Purgatory was about to successfully attack Daki, a black shadow suddenly flashed in front of Daki, and then a hunched, ugly man blocked in front of Daki. Hattori Kyujo's Purgatory then crashed into the chest of that ugly man. The huge impact only made that ugly man's figure slide back a little distance. "You are not allowed to hurt my sister." The ugly man endured Hattori Kyujo's attack, and angrily warned Hattori Kyujo, who was emitting flames all over her body. Hattori Kyujo's Purgatory did not seem to cause much damage to the ugly man. 5:15, Chapter 5:15. The ugly man who helped Daki block the attack was Daki's brother, Jayataro. After launching Black Evil Storm Kill on Ryaji, Jayataro thought that Ryaji had been killed by him, so Jayataro, who had an inseparable feeling for his sister, came non-stop relying on the symbiotic connection between the two. Although Hattori Kyujo's Purgatory Meteor did not repel Jayataro, Hattori Kyujo's attack was not without causing damage to Jayataro. At this time, Jayataro's left chest had already been eroded by the terrifying burning effect of Purgatory Meteor. The burned area was spreading rapidly on Jayataro's upper body, but the most serious was still near the area where Hattori Kyujo's attack had landed. In fact, it was not easy for Jayataro to withstand Hattori Kyujo's Purgatory Meteor. The burning sensation of the skin could still be tolerated, but the burning sensation of the heart could not be compared to the skin, because the position that Hattori Kyujo attacked was the heart, so most of the damage was actually endured by the heart. "Ah!" Jayataro roared, and Daki, seeing that her brother had helped her block Hattori Kyujo's attack, could not help but shout at him, "Brother!" At the same time, Daki then controlled the sashes, no longer entangled with Ina shook, but rather quickly wrapped back, preparing to help Jayataro out of trouble. And as Daki's attack rang out, Jayataro also took action, withstanding Hattori Kyujo's attack, and swung the scythe in his hand towards Hattori Kyujo's neck. Hattori Kyujo, seeing this, immediately retracted her technique, pulled back the Nichiren blade that was stuck in Jayataro's chest, and then pulled out the Nichiren blade that was still inside the scabbard to counterattack. Flame breathing, 2nd form, Rising Scorching Sun. Hattori Kyujo met the attack with an upward slash, and then slashed on the scythe that Jayataro had swung over. As soon as the two weapons came into contact, the arm that Hattori Kyujo was holding the Nichiren blade with shook suddenly. A huge force then fell on Hattori Kyujo's arm, making Hattori Kyujo almost unable to withstand it. Although Jayataro's physique was very thin, as an upper-rank demon, this did not mean that his strength would be very weak. Hattori Kyujo was repelled by Jayataro's attack, and behind her, Daki's sashes were already approaching Hattori Kyujo quickly like spirit snakes. "Behind you!" Ina shook did not have time to support her, and could only shout to Hattori Kyujo. And Zenitsu Agatsuma had already prepared to support Hattori Kyujo at the first moment when Jayataro appeared. As soon as Ina shook's voice fell, Zenitsu Agatsuma turned into a ray of lightning, cutting off all the sashes behind Hattori Kyujo, and finally also cut off one of Jayataro's arms along the way. And after Jayataro's arm was cut off, he immediately aimed the severed arm at Hattori Kyujo, and then from the cut of the severed arm, a small tornado storm blew out from Jayataro's severed arm. Blood demon art, hemokinesis, rotating circular slashes, flying blood scythes. Because she did not understand Jayataro, Hattori Kyujo did not have time to react at all, and was hit head-on by that circular/reincarnation. Her figure flew out. As Hattori Kyujo's figure flew out, a large number of blood mouths on her body then splashed out a lot of blood. In the end, Hattori Kyujo fell into a pool of blood. Shallow and deep blood mouths on her body kept bleeding, and the blood mouths almost covered her entire upper body. 516, Chapter 516. The scars on the body were not the most distressing. The most distressing was perhaps still Hattori Kyujo's face. On Hattori Kyujo's beautiful face, Jyotaro's attack had also created many blood mouths. Some blood mouths were even terribly deep. After taking Jyotaro's attack head-on, Hattori Kyujo did not die directly, but it caused her to lose the ability to fight. At this time, it would already be a very good result if Hattori Kyujo could barely stand up on her own. Kyujo! Inashuk then shouted. And Zenitsu Agatsuma did not expect that Hattori Kyujo would be attacked by Jyotaro, so Zenitsu Agatsuma also did not fully react to Hattori Kyujo's sudden injury. Tanjiro, while controlling Nezuko, also paid attention to the situation of the battle. Seeing Hattori Kyujo injured, the kind-hearted Tanjiro could not help but blame himself in his heart. Because Tanjiro believed that if he could have fought alongside Hattori Kyujo at that time, perhaps there would not have been such a result. Although Tanjiro could not join the battle, it was because Nezuko was out of control, but it was Tanjiro's choice to bring Nezuko, so Tanjiro had to be responsible for his choice. Nezuko, calm down quickly. I'm going to help Zenitsu and the others. Tanjiro also said to Nezuko with unusual anxiety in his heart. If Tanjiro's words were useful, then the situation would not be like this now. Makio and Suma also did not have any way. If they let Tanjiro join the battle, and the two of them were responsible for controlling Nezuko, they would definitely not be able to control her. If Nezuko could not be controlled, it would affect the battle even more. And Jyotaro, after seriously injuring Hattori Kyujo, immediately launched an attack on Zenitsu Agatsuma, aiming at Zenitsu Agatsuma, and threw a scythe over. Zenitsu Agatsuma only knew Thunderclap and Flash, and he had already used it once just now, so Zenitsu Agatsuma had no other techniques to deal with Jyotaro's attack at this time, and could only deal with it through ordinary swings. Zenitsu Agatsuma, who did not have the blessing of techniques, had his combat power drop in a straight line, although Zenitsu Agatsuma blocked the scythe that Jyotaro had thrown over, but because his own attack was not strong enough and his strength was insufficient, Zenitsu Agatsuma could not resist the huge inertia of the scythe. After the scythe collided with the Nichiren blade in his hand, he staggered and sat down on the ground. At the same time, Daki's sashes coiled over all of a sudden, and tightly entangled Zenitsu Agatsuma. Zenitsu! Inashuk, seeing that Zenitsu Agatsuma had also encountered misfortune, felt even more angry in his heart. Inashuk, who had approached Jyotaro, leaped up, and then launched an angry attack on Jyotaro. Beast breathing, fourth Fang, slice, and dice. Inashuk kept waving the two swords in his hands crosswise. At the same time as the attack landed, Jyotaro's arm that had been cut off by Zenitsu Agatsuma had already regenerated. Facing Inashuk's attack, Jyotaro muttered somewhat disdainfully, "Too weak." Blood Demon Art, Hemokinesis, Flying Blood Sickles. Blood Demon Art, Hemokinesis, Flying Blood Sickles. Jyotaro swings a blood blade with his own blood through the scythe. The blood blade has neurotoxins. Once attacked by the blood blade, it will be affected by the toxins, lightly causing paralysis and weakness throughout the body, and heavily causing direct death. Jyotaro can use his own will to change the attack trajectory of the blood blade. The blood blade will not disappear as long as it does not attack the enemy without being destroyed. 517, Chapter 517. Jyotaro's blood blade easily disintegrated Inashuk's attack, and that blood blade with neurotoxins was not just one, but rather 7 or 8 crisscrossing ones. Inashuk. Even Tanjiro, who was controlling Nezuko, could not help but call out. Kyujo was injured. Zenitsu's situation was also not optimistic. Tanjiro did not want anything to happen to Inashuk again. At the critical moment, a terrifying fire flashed, instantly evaporating the blood blade completely, and at the same time, in the area where Inashuk was, the raindrops in the sky also vanished in an instant when the fire appeared, and at the same time, a high temperature filled that area. At the same time, the sashes that were entangled Zenitsu Agatsuma, seemed to be cut off by some force, and also burned up. The part of the sashes that were entangled Zenitsu Agatsuma also lost their life, and no longer entangled Zenitsu Agatsuma tightly, but rather slipped off Zenitsu Agatsuma's body. A man with flames wrapped around his body stood in front of Inashuk. This man was Ryaji, who had rushed over. Ryaji was like the god of fire descending, exuding a terrifying aura. Inashuk was also shocked by Ryaji's appearance, and looked at Ryaji blankly, completely not knowing what he should do next. Besides Inashuk, Daki and Jayataro were also shocked. And Jayataro, under the powerful impact of Ryaji's purgatory meteor, had his upper body and lower body separated, and both were lie on the ground. Ryaji-senpai. Tanjiro shouted with joy. Ryaji was like a reassurance pill in Tanjiro's heart. As long as Ryaji was there, all dangers would be solved easily. After Ryaji stood still, he did not talk to anyone, he looked unusually aloof. The reason why Ryaji did not talk was also very simple, it was that the situation did not allow it. Now was not the time to talk. Ryaji's figure flashed again, and he came to Hattori Kyujo, who was lying in a pool of blood, like a ghost, and then picked her up in one fell swoop, and then brought her to the location where Tanjiro was. The clever Zenitsu Agatsuma had already slipped away secretly after getting out of trouble. After Ryaji carried Hattori Kyujo to the location where Tanjiro was shrink, Nezuko became even more violent, and at the same time kept chanting in her mouth, blood, blood, blood. Ryaji also noticed Nezuko's abnormality, although he did not know why Nezuko would become like this. Ryaji knew that this was not a good thing. Ryaji did not have time to pay attention to Nezuko now, because compared to Nezuko's abnormality, the injured Hattori Kyujo must be treated in time. So Ryaji planned to help Hattori Kyujo stabilize her injuries first, and then he could take care of Nezuko. Ryaji first put Hattori Kyujo down on the ground, and then took off the Demon Slayer sword from his waist, and then threw it towards Zenitsu Agatsuma. While Zenitsu Agatsuma was at a loss to catch the Demon Slayer sword that Ryaji had thrown over, Ryaji's words then came over. Zenitsu, use this sword and Inashuk together to buy me some time, this sword can suppress the demon's recovery. The reason why Ryaji did not give Inashuk the Demon Slayer sword to use was because Inashuk was a dual-wielding swordsman. If he gave him a sword, he would definitely not be used to it. Secondly, Inashuk's blade was serrated, not a flat blade, he might not be able to exert his power with a flat blade sword. Hearing these words, Zenitsu Agatsuma also knew what Ryaji was going to do next, so he immediately replaced his Nichiren blade with Ryaji's Demon Slayer sword. 518, Chapter 518. If the Demon Slayer sword could really suppress the recovery of demons, then Zenitsu Agatsuma could really cooperate with Thunderclap and Flash, sixfold to buy Ryaji some time. And Jayataro had already reconnected his body in a short period of time. Daki, seeing Ryaji coming to disrupt things, then immediately questioned Jayataro somewhat unhappily. Brother, didn't you say that the person had already been killed by you? I don't know, but he did take my attack. Because he did not understand Ryaji, Jayataro could not explain the reason. Hearing these words, Daki then immediately said, he must have hid underground. Your attack did not hit him. However, Daki quickly realized a problem, and that was where was Akaza. Could it be that Akaza also thought that Ryaji had been killed, and had already left now? Or was Akaza killed by Ryaji? Just as Daki wanted to ask Jayataro about Akaza's situation, Zenitsu Agatsuma had already prepared to launch Thunderclap and Flash, sixfold. Thunder breathing, Thunderclap and Flash, eightfold. This time, Zenitsu Agatsuma took out his trump card, and planned to use eightfold to hold back Daki and Jayataro. Thunderclap and Flash, eightfold was an enhanced version of Thunderclap and Flash, sixfold, increasing 2 flashes, and also allowing Zenitsu Agatsuma's body to reach the limit of the number of flashes it could make. After eightfold was launched, if Daki and Jayataro could still counterattack, Zenitsu Agatsuma would really have no follow-up moves, because the only technique that Zenitsu Agatsuma knew was Thunderclap and Flash. Suddenly, Zenitsu Agatsuma's figure turned into a ray of lightning again and flashed towards Jayataro. This time, there was no Daki in Zenitsu Agatsuma's eyes, only Jayataro as his target. Zenitsu Agatsuma also planned to hit eightfold on Jayataro, and then induce Heavenly Thunder, so that Heavenly Thunder could hold back Jayataro. He was targeting Jayataro also because Jayataro was more powerful than Daki. Only by holding back Jayataro could the restraint of Daki be left to Inashuk without any problems. The fact was indeed so, Jayataro was much more powerful than Daki. If it was not for the sake of symbiosis, Daki's strength would not be able to rank among the upper ranks. This was also why Hattori Kyujo could have a battle with Daki, and Zenitsu Agitsuma could cut off Daki's neck when dealing with Daki. The situation was originally a sure win, but it was completely changed because of Jayataro's arrival. Facing Zenitsu Agitsuma, who was flashing like lightning, Jayataro's speed definitely could not keep up with Zenitsu Agitsuma, and it was impossible to attack Zenitsu Agitsuma actively either. At this time, the only thing Jayataro could do was to defend passively. When Zenitsu Agitsuma could no longer flash, that would be the moment for Jayataro to counterattack. And Daki, seeing Zenitsu Agitsuma flashing, immediately released dense sashes to protect herself and Jayataro. The process of the whole thing happened quickly, just as Daki's sashes had just protected the two. Zenitsu Agitsuma's first strike was cutting off Daki's sashes, and slashing towards Jayataro. Just as Daki's sashes were cut off, Jayataro quickly judged Zenitsu Agitsuma's position, and immediately turned around and swung a scythe, which just happened to swing on Ryaji's Demon Slayer sword blade. Jayataro, who had successfully blocked Zenitsu Agitsuma's first strike, could not help but raise the corners of his mouth, revealing an expression that said it was nothing more than this. 519, Chapter 519. And at the same time, Ryaji had already started to use the wood spirit energy to treat Hattori Kyujo. As Ryaji used the wood breathing, the flames on Ryaji's body then slowly faded, and then volatilized a large amount of wood spirit energy. A large amount of wood spirit energy emitted a faint green light. The green light shrouded Ryaji's body. Tanjiro knew that this was Ryaji's magical healing technique, so he did not disturb Ryaji from saving Hattori Kyujo, although Nezuko was still very mad at this time. Makio and Suma did not dare to say anything more, and could only watch quietly. Afterwards, Ryaji then grabbed Hattori Kyujo's hand, and then gently delivered the wood spirit energy into her body. Hattori Kyujo's consciousness was still clear. It was the first time she had received Ryaji's wood spirit energy treatment. Although she did not know what Ryaji was doing, she could feel that her body was gradually becoming energetic. It seemed that she could stand up and fight immediately now. Just as Ryaji was treating Hattori Kyujo, Ryaji then took advantage of this opportunity to ask Tanjiro, "Tanjiro, what's wrong with Nezuko?" "Ryaji-senpai, I don't know either. After I woke up, Nezuko was like this," Tanjiro said. At this time, Makio then interjected and said, "When I brought the others over, this Nezuko seemed to step Daki under her feet." Then the boar head took the initiative to greet her, but suddenly launched an attack on the boar head. "Yes, when I woke up, I saw Nezuko attacking Inashuk, and then I controlled Nezuko like this." Ryaji, combining Tanjiro and Makio's accounts, also roughly deduced the development of the matter, so he then said, "Then it must be that when you fainted, Nezuko protected you. But it may be because Daki was too strong, Nezuko could only completely liberate her abilities, and then she lost control. This can be seen from her taking off the muzzle on her own initiative." Hearing these words, Tanjiro blamed himself even more. At the moment when he fainted at that time, Tanjiro did see Nezuko's back blocking in front of him. Plus, he had been safe and sound during the time he had fainted, which could also prove that Nezuko had protected him. If Nezuko had not been to protect him, then she would not have lost control. Tanjiro felt that he had harmed Nezuko. "Ryaji-senpai, then do you have any way to make Nezuko change back?" Tanjiro then asked immediately. Ryaji could see the look of self-blame in Tanjiro's eyes, but Ryaji did not have any clear way to solve Nezuko's problem. Ryaji shook his head lightly. Tanjiro, seeing Ryaji shaking his head, could not help but blame himself even more in his heart. "I don't, but you do," Ryaji then said. Hearing these words, Tanjiro did not understand Ryaji's words. If he had a way, how could he not know it? Nezuko's situation may be because the fierce battle has completely activated the activity of Muzan Kibutsuji's blood, which has caused Nezuko to lose her original reason, and become bloodthirsty. Being in this state for a long time may completely erase a little bit of humanity that she has worked so hard to maintain for these 3 years. You are Nezuko's closest person, so as long as you can awaken the humanity deep in Nezuko's heart. Ryaji continued to say his speculate. Ryaji-senpai, please don't speak in riddles, just tell me what to do. Tanjiro also heard that Ryaji seemed to have some way to make Nezuko change back. 520, Chapter 520. The way is to tell Nezuko about the most memorable things in her childhood, or think about how you and your family coaxed her when Nezuko was being naughty. Only through past memories may it be possible to awaken Nezuko's humanity. Ryaji no longer spoke in riddles, and immediately gave Tanjiro ideas. It was because Ryaji did not grow up with Nezuko, so only Tanjiro could possibly awaken the humanity that had been swallowed by Nezuko. Hearing these words, Tanjiro's brain turned quickly, and then he began to tell Nezuko about things from the past. But Tanjiro said a lot of things from his childhood, and Nezuko still did not calm down. Tanjiro became more and more anxious, and also looked at Ryaji. It seemed that he was using his eyes to tell Ryaji that this did not seem to be effective. At this time, Ryaji then said, "Lull Nezuko to sleep. How your mother lulled Nezuko to sleep, you do the same." Hearing these words, Tanjiro once again recalled how his mother lulled Nezuko to sleep, so he imitated his mother's appearance, gently stroking Nezuko's forehead, and then sang a ballad. Although Tanjiro did not sing very well, no one intended to laugh at Tanjiro. As Tanjiro's ballad rang out, the mad Nezuko suddenly stopped struggling. Tanjiro, seeing that it was effective, did not dare to stop and continued to sing. After about half a minute, Nezuko really fell asleep, and at the same time, her strengthened body gradually shrank, and finally turned into the appearance of a 5-year-old child. Great! Tanjiro, seeing that Nezuko had fallen asleep, and had turned back into a child, felt relieved in his heart. At the same time, Inashuk's voice then rang out, "Ryaji Aniki, Zenitsu has fainted." After Zenitsu Agatsuma fainted again after using Thunderclap and Flash, eightfold, Inashuk then came back to his senses from the shock that Ryaji had brought. While Ryaji was healing Hattori Kyujo and talking with Tanjiro, Zenitsu Agatsuma had already launched all of Thunderclap and Flash, eightfold, and all of them hit Jayataro. At the fifth strike, Jayataro fell into a state of paralysis. Although Jayataro asked Daki to help him hold back Zenitsu Agatsuma at the first moment when he fell into a state of paralysis, Daki could not cope at all, because her sashes could not block Zenitsu Agatsuma, who was holding Ryaji's Demon Slayer sword. Plus, the Demon Slayer sword also had the effect of suppressing recovery, which further limited Daki's ability, making Daki's sashes less threatening. Seeing that Daki could not stop Zenitsu Agatsuma at all, Jayataro had to tell Daki to quickly create distance from Zenitsu Agatsuma, so that even if he was beheaded, as long as Daki was fine, then things would not end. If Zenitsu Agatsuma was not using Ryaji's Demon Slayer sword, then Jayataro would not be so careful. It was because Jayataro had seen the weirdness of the Demon Slayer sword, so Jayataro knew that being hit by this sword would weaken his regeneration and recovery ability. Plus, Ryaji was also present. If he could not recover from his injuries at the first moment, Daki would definitely have no chance of escaping if she faced Ryaji's finishing blow. If his body was not paralyzed, Jayataro could definitely guarantee that he would not be attacked by Zenitsu Agatsuma. And after his body was paralyzed, Jayataro could hardly control his body to make any reactions. Zenitsu Agatsuma really had a chance to cut off Jayataro's neck. 521, Chapter 521. The reason for having Daki create distance was because Jayataro knew that Zenitsu Agatsuma's attention was all on him, so Jayataro knew that Zenitsu Agatsuma would not suddenly change his target to attack Daki. Therefore, having Daki temporarily avoid was a more safe decision. Because Jayataro and Daki had a symbiotic relationship, the two could communicate not only through words, but also through the cells in their bodies on a conscious level. The efficiency of this communication was extremely fast. Almost at the first moment, Daki retreated to a safe position. Zenitsu Agatsuma's last 3 strikes easily landed on Jayataro's body, and Jayataro had no way to deal with it. In these last 3 strikes, Zenitsu Agatsuma's first strike first cut off Jayataro's arm, the second strike cut off Jayataro's waist, and after confirming that Jayataro's whole body was paralyzed by the rhythm of thunder, Zenitsu Agatsuma's last strike aimed at Jayataro's neck. Thunder breathing, godlike speed. Thunder breathing, godlike speed. This technique is a technique used by Zenitsu Agatsuma to enhance the power and speed of Thunderclap and Flash, bringing thunderclap and flash to the extreme, because it puts a great burden on the body. Zenitsu Agatsuma can only use Godspeed activation 5 times, and if used continuously, he can only use it twice. Zenitsu Agatsuma activated Godspeed in order to ensure that he could cut off Jayataro's neck. It was just that Zenitsu Agatsuma did not know that Jayataro and Daki had a symbiotic relationship, so Zenitsu Agatsuma's attack this time was definitely ineffective. With the help of Godspeed, Zenitsu Agatsuma successfully cut off Jayataro's neck in the 8th strike. At the moment when Zenitsu Agatsuma stopped, he suddenly fainted again because his body had reached its limit. At the same time, thunderclap and flash, which hit all 8 strikes, successfully induced the heavenly thunder in the sky. A flash of lightning suddenly flashed in the high null in the dark night. If it was not for being injured by the Demon Slayer sword, Jayataro would definitely have reconnected his cut-off head and body. Daki, seeing that Zenitsu Agatsuma had fainted, manipulated the sashes without hesitation, wanting to control Zenitsu Agatsuma. Inashuk, after reminding Ryaji, immediately stepped forward to stop Daki after Daki made a move. As a result, just as his front foot moved, a heavenly thunder struck down, and with the strike of this heavenly thunder, one after another heavenly thunder then followed one after another. The place where Jayataro and Zenitsu Agatsuma were located was immediately sealed off by heavenly thunder. Most of the heavenly thunder struck Jayataro's body, some of them missed, and some of them struck Zenitsu Agatsuma's body directly. This heavenly thunder further affected Jayataro's regeneration and recovery. This power of nature was the purest. Each heavenly thunder that struck down would almost kill most of the cells in Jayataro's body. Even if Jayataro's cell regeneration and recovery was very powerful, it still could not compare to the destruction speed of heavenly thunder. And Daki's sashes were also injured by this heavenly thunder, making it impossible for her to approach Zenitsu Agatsuma at all. Even if she approached Zenitsu Agatsuma, who was struck by heavenly thunder, not only did not have his body damaged, but rather resonated with heavenly thunder. Dense arcs of electricity surged around him, which made it even more impossible for Daki's sashes to touch Zenitsu Agatsuma. Go quickly. Jayataro, feeling that the situation was not right, immediately gave his sister Daki the information to escape. 522 Chapter 522. Inashuk was forced to stay away by these heavenly thunders. If he was accidentally injured, then even if he did not become an electric boar, the damage to his body would be extremely great, and he might not even leave any sequelae. Daki, seeing that the situation was not right, thought for a moment, and then turned her head and fled. Although choosing to escape without completing the task might result in Muzan Kibutsuji's hold accountable, Daki thought carefully, and still had a reason to shirk responsibility. Daki could shirk the responsibility for the failure of the task to Akaza or Kokushibo, because Tanjiro, who should have been isolated and helpless, had now obtained so many people to protect him. With such a reason, Daki could also have an explanation with Muzan Kibutsuji. And just as Daki was running away, the broadcast of the super-dimensional transcending system rang out in Ryaji's mind again. New task activated. Task: stop the fleeing Daki, and kill Daki and Jayataro, who are Upper Moon 6. Task completion reward: Demon God Devourer level increased to B. Task failure penalty: host's lifespan reduced by 50 years, host's current lifespan is still 78 years. Task valid time limit: 5 minutes. Completing or not completing the task beyond the task valid time limit will be considered a task failure. At the first moment of receiving the task, Ryaji immediately stopped treating Hattori Kyujo. And Hattori Kyujo's injuries had been stabilized under Ryaji's brief treatment, and there was no longer any danger to her life. Those severed blood vessels had also been reconnected under Ryaji's healing, and the situation of heavy bleeding no longer existed. Now Hattori Kyujo only needed to rest, and her body would slowly recover. Ryaji, releasing Hattori Kyujo's palm, immediately stood up. As Ryaji stood up, the wood spirit energy around his body quickly dissipated, and what replaced it was wisps of flames burning around Ryaji's body, and then the flames instantly became turbulent, completely covering Ryaji's entire body. A very surprised expression appeared on Hattori Kyujo's face, because Hattori Kyujo felt Ryaji's extremely familiar breathing rhythm, which was the rhythm of flame breathing, and also the special pulse frequency of the purgatory meteor technique. The reason why Hattori Kyujo was surprised was because Hattori Kyujo had only seen Ryaji use water breathing, and it was impossible for one person to master two breathing techniques at the same time, because when the body adapts to the breathing rhythm of one breathing technique, it is impossible to accept the breathing rhythm of other breathing techniques. This point had already been explained before. If one insisted on learning, it would be easy to disrupt the breathing rhythm that had already been mastered, causing the original breathing to be unable to be used correctly. Because after breathing reaches a certain realm, it will become a habit of the body, or an instinct, and instinct is difficult to be changed. So after seeing Ryaji use flame breathing, what Hattori Kyujo had in her heart was shock. Moreover, Hattori Kyujo could also feel that Ryaji's mastery and understanding of flame breathing had reached a pinnacle. This really made Ryaji's position in Hattori Kyujo's heart reach a height that no one could match, even the pillars could not match it. If Hattori Kyujo knew that Ryaji used a breathing technique to help her treat, it was estimated that Ryaji would become a god in Hattori Kyujo's heart. 523, Chapter 523. Flame Breathing, Ninth Form, Purgatory. Ryaji's figure then turned into a blazing meteor, and shot out towards the direction where Daki was fleeing. At the moment when Ryaji's figure shot out, a powerful heat wave hit Tanjiro, Hattori Kyujo, and Makio and Suma. And the moisture around them was also evaporated instantly. The clothes and bodies of the four, which were wet by the rain, were also dried by the heat flow created by Ryaji's purgatory meteor. The heat in the air made the four feel very warm and comfortable, and Hattori Kyujo did not have time to ask Ryaji why he would use flame breathing. Ryaji turned into a meteor, and quickly broke through the minefield that Zenitsu Agatsuma had created. Under this mountain surrounded by two mountains, there was no way to bypass the minefield. What Ryaji could do was to use a speed faster than heavenly thunder to forcibly pass through that minefield. Ryaji had to cut off Daki's neck before Jayataro reattached his head, otherwise, it would be difficult to achieve the desired effect if he cut off Daki's neck again after Jayataro recovered. Daki, feeling a heat wave attack coming from behind while running away, then knew that danger was approaching. Daki then suddenly shot a sash towards one of the cliff walls. The sash pierced through the cliff wall, and then the sash contracted sharply, and then pulled Daki's figure into the air. Because of Daki's ascent, Ryaji's purgatory meteor missed. It had to be said that Daki's adaptability was still very strong. Knowing that her speed was not as fast as Ryaji, she used such a method to avoid Ryaji's kill attack. If Daki could not avoid it, Daki also knew clearly in her heart that the ending waiting for her was death. Ryaji was a demon slayer that Daki did not dare to underestimate, because even Muzan Kibutsuji treated him so cautiously. It could be seen that Ryaji's existence seemed to be more threatening than the entire demon slayer corps. After Ryaji appeared, the situation of Akaza was unknown, which had already made Daki feel uneasy in her heart, because Akaza was very likely to have been killed by Ryaji. If Jayataro had chosen to be with Akaza when Ryaji's life and death were unknown at that time, perhaps the situation would not have evolved into this situation. After Ryaji's technique missed, he immediately retracted his technique, and at the same time, switched his breathing technique to water breathing. Water breathing, ninth form, splashing water flow, turbulent. This technique was a movement skill similar to flowing dance. Although it was not a technique that Ryaji used often, it was a technique that could play a role at a critical moment. Ryaji's figure then suddenly jumped in the air, and quickly broke through towards Daki. Daki had never seen any human being able to jump in the air, but Ryaji had already shown running in the air before, so Daki was not as surprised this time as she was last time. Moreover, Ryaji had completed running in the air with the help of telekinesis last time. This time Ryaji could not use telekinesis, because he had not activated Demon God transformation. Moreover, Ryaji was not really jumping in the air this time, but rather used the help of raindrops. This was the most magical thing about splashing water flow, turbulent. Because the splashing water flow, turbulent movement technique was a movement technique used when the feet did not have too many points of force and area of force. 524, Chapter 524. And the dense raindrops became the point of force for Ryaji to land, but not just any water-breathing user could do what Ryaji did, even the pillars. It was estimated that they could not reach Ryaji's level. To use raindrops as a foothold, in addition to being very familiar with the technique, one must also have a deep grasp of water breathing, at least to be able to resonate with water. Secondly, the amount of rain and the size of the raindrops were also very important. If it was drizzle, then even if Ryaji was more powerful, he would not be able to do it. And just this time the rain was heavy enough. The raindrops were not only large but also very dense, so Ryaji could step on the raindrops and jump. If it was not raining at this time, then Ryaji would not be able to complete such an operation. Just like Zenitsu Agatsuma inducing heavenly thunder, if it was not a thunderstorm weather, it would not be possible to induce it. Daki used the sash to hang on the cliff wall, but this also greatly limited Daki's actions. Seeing that Ryaji was not affected in any way, and was still approaching step by step, Daki was also a little panic, but because she was hanging on the cliff wall with the sash, Daki's actions were somewhat affected. Blood Demon Art, Obi Sash Manipulation 8-layered Obi Slash, Pulverize. Daki could only be forced to use her strongest Blood Demon Art, 8-layered Obi Slash, Pulverize, to try to hold Ryaji back, and then create a chance to escape. Water Breathing, 6th form, Whirlpool. Ryaji, seeing Daki's dense sashes shooting towards him, immediately gave a counterattack without hesitation. In mid-air, Ryaji suddenly twisted his waist, and then used the Nichiren blade in his hand to swing out a water tornado that was also astonishing in power. Although the power of this technique would be greatly increased if it was used in water, it was raining heavily now, and it also gained a certain increase effect. The surrounding raindrops, with Ryaji's own rotation and the swing of the Nichiren blade, then gathered together immediately. The huge water tornado wrapped Ryaji up. Daki's sashes then collided with Ryaji's water tornado. The powerful suction force sucked Daki's sashes in all of a sudden, and Daki's sashes were connected to Daki's body. Daki did not have time to break away the connection with the sashes, and was sucked into Ryaji's water tornado together. As the water tornado disappeared, shredded sashes were scattered all over the sky, and Daki was thrown away towards the cliff wall. The major impact embedded Daki into the cliff wall, and at this time she was naked, and her body was already torn and bleeding. Ryaji hardly gave Daki a chance to breathe, and clicked on the raindrops again with his sawls, approaching Daki. Water Breathing, 1st form, Water Surface Slash. As Ryaji's Nichiren blade cut down Daki's neck, Daki was unwilling to be killed like this, and was still struggling to the end. It was better to say that she was struggling to buy time for Jayataro. As long as Jayataro recovered, then it would not matter even if Daki's neck was cut off. When Ryaji's Nichiren blade touched Daki's neck was like rubber, denting towards the direction of Ryaji's slash. Water Breathing, 10th form, Constant Flux. Seeing Daki's neck twisting with his attack trajectory, Ryaji immediately changed his technique, and used an attack with a more twisted attack trajectory. 525, Chapter 525. It could be said that no matter how Daki struggled, it was all in vain in front of Ryaji. Ryaji had too many techniques and methods to deal with Daki. In the end, Daki still could not escape the destiny of death. And the whole process seemed to have many things happen, but these things almost all happened in a flash. Ryaji only used a total of 10 seconds to kill Daki, and in these 10 seconds, Jayataro did not have a chance to recover at all. Not only was it the suppression of the Demon Slayer's sword, but the attack of Heavenly Thunder also greatly affected Jayataro's recovery. For this kind of pure natural attack, the damage to the demon was real. If the Heavenly Thunder continued long enough, it was possible to directly kill Jayataro. Because the method of killing demons was to destroy the cells that maintained the bodily functions of the demon, and the cell activity of the demon was very high, which also led to the demon having a super regenerative recovery ability, so it was difficult to kill all the cells in the demon's body with general methods and means. Therefore, the Nichiren blade appeared. The Nichiren blade had been mentioned before. The reason why the Nichiren blade could kill demons was because the material for making the Nichiren blade was an iron ore that had been exposed to the sun for a long time, which allowed the Nichiren blade to be attached with factors that could destroy the demon's body. And only by cutting off the demon's head could these factors act on the demon's head, allowing the demon to completely lose control of the body. And after the body could not be controlled, the cells in the body would not regenerate on their own, and then the demon's head and body could only be destroyed by the factors bit by bit. Shinobu Koko used the poison extracted from wisteria flowers to poison the demons. The principle was also to destroy the demon cells. Because the demon cells were very active, this made it easier for the poison to spread. But if the poison could not kill the demon, then the demon's body's emergency response would produce antibodies. And the more powerful the demon, the stronger the immunity to poison. At the same time, while Ryaji was chasing Daki, Inashuk was not idle either. After the heavenly thunder stopped, he went up to destroy Jayatero's body again, which undoubtedly made Jayatero worse, and he could not recover immediately. The reason why Inashuk did this was also because he was afraid that Jayatero would be like Daki, simply cutting off his neck would not kill him, so Inashuk could only further destroy Jayatero's body, to see if he could attack Jayatero's real vitals. After Ryaji cut off Daki's neck, Daki's body then began to disintegrate, but compared to other low-level demons, the disintegration speed of upper moon demons was much slower. Task completed. Host's Demon God Devourer ability increased to be. Demon God Transformation Attribute Amplification increased by 100%, Demon God Power Consumption increased by 50% accordingly. Normal State Base Attribute increased by 10%, Current Total Amplification Attribute 20%. The broadcast of the super-dimensional transcending system rang out again after Ryaji killed Daki. Although the attribute amplification of Demon God Transformation was doubled, it caused the Demon God power to consume 50% more. In other words, although Ryaji was twice as powerful as before after activating Demon God Transformation, the time to maintain Demon God Transformation was shortened. Ryaji did not know whether this was good or bad now. Now Ryaji was too lazy to think so much, so he took out the blood sampling tool made by Yashiro, and then threw it like a dart, ing it into Daki's body embedded in the cliff wall. 526, Chapter 526. After collecting Daki's blood, Ryaji then stepped on the raindrops again, and jumped in front of Daki's body, and then took down the collected blood. Afterwards, Ryaji came to Jayatero's side again, watching Inashuk still destroying Jayatero's body. Ryaji then pulled Inashuk away, and said, "Inashuk, that's enough. He's already dead." After being pulled by Ryaji, Inashuk then asked again, "Is he dead?" "Dead." Ryaji nodded, and then said, "You should go see how Zenitsu is." Hearing these words, Inashuk then immediately went to check Zenitsu Agitsuma's situation. Ryaji then took out a blood sampling tool again, and then collected a copy of Jayatero's blood as well. Although Daki and Jayatero had a symbiotic relationship, Ryaji was not sure whether the blood of the two was the same, so it was better to collect a copy of both. After collecting the blood, Inashuk had already carried Zenitsu Agitsuma on his back. Ryaji checked Zenitsu Agitsuma's body, and after knowing that Zenitsu Agitsuma was not in any serious condition, Ryaji then treated the bite wound on his neck. When he saw the bite wound on Zenitsu Agitsuma's neck, Ryaji thought it was bitten by Nezuko, but after asking, he found out that it was bitten by Daki. Afterwards, Ryaji then opened a hole in the cliff wall, and then let everyone move into the cave. Now that the battle was over, there was no need to be in the rain anymore. After doing these things, Ryaji then said to everyone, "You guys rest here first, I have to go back to the entertainment district to take a look." And at this time, Hattori Kyujo then finally had the opportunity to ask Ryaji. Although Hattori Kyujo did not know what was the point of asking this, she still asked, "Captain Ryaji, were you using flame breathing just now?" Hearing these words, Ryaji looked at Hattori Kyujo, and then nodded, without saying much. That he could use many different types of breathing, this was bound to be known by people sooner or later, so Ryaji did not deliberately hide it. It was just that Ryaji would not deliberately show off. "We're going too," Makio and Suma said in unison. Now that the crisis here had been resolved, this made the two of them worry about their husband Uzui Tengen. No one could say for sure what the situation was like in the entertainment district. Ryaji did not stop them too much, but rather said, "Whatever, but I won't wait for you." After speaking, Ryaji then flashed away. At this time, Ryaji was also worried about Shinobu Koko, so Ryaji naturally would not slow down to wait for Makio and Suma. Ryaji had experienced Kokushibo's power again. Ryaji knew that Kokushibo had not used all his strength during the Mugen train incident, so even if there were 3 pillars dealing with Kokushibo, Ryaji was still worried. Makio and Suma knew that they could not keep up with Ryaji's speed, so they did not mean for Ryaji to wait. After all, the situation in the entertainment district was unknown. Makio and Suma had also seen Ryaji's power, so it was what they wanted to see for Ryaji to rush back to the entertainment district to support as soon as possible. The reason why they also wanted to go back was to confirm how Uzui Tenjin's situation was. You guys stay here, we will come back after the crisis in the entertainment district is resolved. Makio finally urged Tanjiro and the others again, and then left with Suma. At this time, Hattori Kyujo, who was leaning against the rock wall, then asked Tanjiro, "Tanjiro, who exactly is Ryaji?" 527, Chapter 527. The reason why Hattori Kyujo asked Tanjiro about this was because Tanjiro and Ryaji's relationship seemed to be quite close. Tanjiro might know more about Ryaji. Hearing these words, Tanjiro shook his head, and then said, "I only know that Ryaji-senpai is Nezuko's guardian, and everyone's guardian." Although Tanjiro and Ryaji's relationship seemed to be more subtle than others, it seemed that Tanjiro knew a lot about Ryaji, but in fact, Ryaji, for Tanjiro, was also a person shrouded in mist, full of mystery. At this time, Ina shook, who was full of frustration, then said, "Really? In the end, I didn't do anything." After speaking, Ina shook used his head to hit the stone wall heavily, unable to accept himself like this. The reason why Ina shook would be like this was because he believed that he had not played any role in the battle. Not playing a role in the battle was a sign of incompetence, which made the strong Ina shook naturally unable to accept his performance. "I'm still too weak. Too weak." Facing Ina shook's self-blame, Tanjiro could also understand, his situation was not the same as Ina shook. In the battle just now, he was completely a bystander. At the same time, because of his lack of strength, he almost caused Nezuko to lose her humanity in order to protect him, and lost herself. "Ina shook, you've done very well. If it wasn't for Nezuko being out of control, you would have killed that Daki long ago." Tanjiro then comforted Ina shook. With Tanjiro's comfort, Ina shook's mood immediately improved a lot, and then he put his hands on his waist, and followed Tanjiro's words and said, "That's right. It's all because of your disobedient sister that this great me missed the opportunity to kill that earthworm woman." However, the limelight was still stolen by that Zenitsu guy in the end. This guy has become less timid and stronger after having a girlfriend. White Haranaki also seems to have a girlfriend. Maybe the girlfriend is the key to becoming stronger. It seems that I have to find a girlfriend too. Ina shook then changed the subject, and analyzed very seriously with his cheeks hold. Hearing these words, Tanjiro was also shocked by Ina shook's strange brain circuit, but Tanjiro did not correct Ina shook's brain circuit. Because half of what Ina shook said was quite correct, and that was that Zenitsu Agitsuma had really changed a lot. After establishing a relationship with Aoi Kenzaki, Zenitsu Agitsuma was no longer as timid as before, and had also become the most desperately one during training. In Zenitsu's words, he just did not want Aoi Kenzaki to be a widow. Because after having Aoi Kenzaki, Zenitsu became more afraid of death, but because of this, Zenitsu also became more effort, in order to become stronger, and ensure that he would not easily die at the hands of demons. It could be said that Aoi Kenzaki had become Zenitsu Agitsuma's spiritual motivation. This was really a very good thing for Zenitsu, not slacking off for the person he loved. And Ryaji was different. Whether Ryaji had a girlfriend or not, it was estimated that it would not have much impact on his own strength. It was just that, a girlfriend for Ina shook, might not have much improvement in Ina shook's strength, because Ina shook's single-minded brain might not see the girlfriend as too important. In other words, the current Ina shook lacked a firm belief, a spiritual power. 528, Chapter 528. Zenitsu Agitsuma's own talent was not bad, and with the blessing of spiritual power, he could now be said to be firing on all cylinders, so Zenitsu, who was originally the weakest corner, suddenly became the strongest corner in the Golden Triangle. Perhaps Ina shook's strength would also be greatly improved after obtaining spiritual power. Because of the weather, Tanjiro and the others could not find dry branches to make a fire for a while, and the surrounding temperature made people feel a trace of coolness. No one responded to Ina shook's words, and there were no other sounds around except for the sound of rain outside. And Hattori Kyujo was not cold with Ina shook's plan to find a girlfriend. On the other side, Ryaji rushed back to the entertainment district at his fastest speed. And what Ryaji saw when he rushed back was a mess in the entertainment district, and he also saw Kokushibo had flashed to the back of Shinobu Koko, who was seriously injured, and seemed to be planning to kill Shinobu Koko from behind. Seeing this scene, Ryaji's heart suddenly raised it, and the cells in his body exploded violently. Water breathing, 11th form, water shadow slash. Almost in an instant, Ryaji used water shadow slash to rescue Shinobu Koko. Because if it was even a second later, Shinobu Koko would die. Ryaji could not accept the woman who had been with him day and night for more than half a year, dying in front of him. Just as Kokushibo's demon blade was about to slash towards the back of Shinobu Koko's neck, Kokushibo's demon blade collided with Ryaji's water blade sword chi. Ryaji's water blade sword chi helped Shinobu Koko block Kokushibo's fatal blow. And on the way back, Ryaji had already reached his heartbeat to more than 200 beats per minute. Ryaji's naked upper body could also see the appearance of marks. On Ryaji's left chest there were light blue marks similar to water waves, and on Ryaji's right chest there were deep brown marks similar to flames. The two kinds of marks spread towards the surroundings, and had the meaning of fusion. And in the gaps between these two different marks, there were also marks similar to veins. These marks seemed to be intending to connect the water wave-like marks and the flame marks together. After activating the mark and transparent world, two-state blessings, Ryaji's speed became even faster, even no less than Zenitsu Agatsuma's thunderclap and flash speed. Almost at the same time as Kokushibo slashed on the water blade sword chi, Ryaji's figure had already appeared on Kokushibo's side, and with one slash, he cut off Kokushibo's arm. Because Ryaji's Demon Slayer sword was still left on Zenitsu Agatsuma's body, Ryaji used his Nichiren blade this time. At this time, the two-colored Nichiren blade also had another color after Ryaji mastered flame breathing, and became a three-colored Nichiren blade. Kokushibo, whose arm was cut off, also reacted very quickly. After feeling that the situation was not right, he immediately created distance. Flame breathing, first form, Shiranui. Ryaji did not seem to intend to give Kokushibo a chance to breathe, and directly launched a force-strong attack on Kokushibo. Kokushibo, looking at Ryaji who was rushing forward again, this time, Kokushibo also saw clearly that the person who saved Shinobu Koko was Ryaji, and a trace of surprise flashed in Kokushibo's eyes. 529, Chapter 529. Although Kokushibo was surprised, this did not affect Kokushibo's actions. Facing Ryaji's attack, Kokushibo's severed arm had been regenerated at the first moment, and gave a response to Ryaji's attack. Suddenly, dense metal impact sounds came from the air, and at the same time, sparks flew everywhere. In just 2 or 3 seconds, Ryaji and Kokushibo had exchanged no less than 10 slashes. The extremely force rhythm made it impossible for Ryaji and Kokushibo to use techniques. In the end, Ryaji and Kokushibo, who could not distinguish the superiority in swordsmanship, finally transformed into a contest of strength. The weapons of the two were tightly stuck together like magnets, and the figures of the two were temporarily fixed in place. Kokushibo then had the opportunity to talk with Ryaji. "Was Akeza that trash killed by you?" Although Kokushibo's words seemed to be concerned about Akeza, it could be heard from Kokushibo's tone that he was angry and unhappy. Are all the Upper Moon demons so united and friendly? They even know how to care about their own kind. Instead of caring about him, you should care about yourself. Ryaji did not tell Kokushibo about Akeza's situation. Just you, relying on the cost of burning your life to fight me, you have already lost. Even if I don't kill you, you won't live long. Kokushibo also replied coldly. Hearing these words, Ryaji did not know what Kokushibo meant, but Ryaji did not ask much. His lifespan was still 78 years, how could he not live long? Compared to a monster like you who won't die naturally, I as a human being really won't live long. Ryaji replied again. And Shinobu Koko, who was rescued, also turned around and excitedly called out to Ryaji, "Ryaji." At this time, Shinobu Koko's injuries were extremely serious. The most shocking thing was that Shinobu Koko's right forearm was missing. It was obviously cut off when fighting Kokushibo. And Uzui Tengen and Kyojuro Rengoku were also not in very good condition. Kyojuro Rengoku's calf was also cut off, and there was a very deep blood mouth on his waist. Uzui Tengen's situation was even worse. Both legs and one arm had been separated from his body, and there were many dense blood mouths on his body. It could be said that Uzui Tengen only had one breath left to hanging. From the situation of Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen's injuries, and the remaining situation around, it could be seen how fierce the battle was at that time, and it could also confirm Kokushibo's power. Even if Ryaji activated Transparent World and Mark, Ryaji was only fighting Kokushibo on a 5-5 basis in a normal state, and this was still a collision without releasing techniques. If it was a collision of techniques, Ryaji might not be able to gain an advantage from Kokushibo's hands. Especially Kokushibo's Moon Breathing, 14th Form, Catastrophe, Tenmen Crescent Moon. If Kokushibo used it, Ryaji would only be able to dodge in a normal state. Shinobu, go quickly. Go to a safe place and wait for me. Facing Shinobu Koko's call, Ryaji immediately said to Shinobu Koko. Shinobu Koko did not have the intention of retreating, but rather said, as a pillar, we cannot retreat. And we have no reason to let you face it alone. Shinobu is right. How can we let you face all this alone? Although our limbs are disabled, Shinobu and I still have the ability to fight. At this time, the seriously injured Kyojuro Rengoku stood up on one leg with difficulty, and then said to Ryaji with a high voice. 530, Chapter 530. Although Uzui Tengen could no longer fight, he did not easily give up the opportunity to live, but rather worked hard to breathe, meaning that he would not give up until the last moment. Now is not the time to be brave, listen to me. Ryaji's tone suddenly became serious, with a hint of command. This is a great opportunity to kill Kokushibo, I won't leave. Shinobu Koko also said very firmly. The reason why Shinobu Koko was unwilling to leave, besides wanting to kill Kokushibo very much, was because Ryaji had activated the mark. And the demon slayers who activated the mark did not live past 25 years old, so Shinobu Koko did not want Ryaji's efforts to not yield any results. It was also for this reason that even if the pillars had the ability to open the mark, they would not easily step into that realm. This was not because they were afraid of death, but rather it depended on the situation. If all 6 upper moon demons of the 12 Kazuki were gathered here now, then the 9 pillars would not hesitate to directly activate the mark. And the reason why Shinobu Koko had not activated the mark was because she had not yet reached the conditions for activation. Kyojuro Rengoku and Uzui Tengen were also the same. This was also why Kokushibo would say that Ryaji was fighting him at the cost of burning his life, because Kokushibo had noticed the mark on Ryaji's body a long time ago. Kokushibo, seeing that Ryaji still had the mind to talk to others, naturally became unhappy in his heart, and immediately became unhappy. But with Ryaji here, it would be difficult for Kokushibo to kill these pillars again. Since Ryaji had rushed back, it meant that there was a problem with Akase's side. Kokushibo did not know whether Tanjiro, whom Muzan Kibutsuji had named to be killed, had been killed. If Ryaji had come a little later, then Kokushibo would definitely have solved Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen. In this way, even if Ryaji rushed back, Kokushibo would not engage in meaningless battles with Ryaji. And if Kokushibo wanted to leave, Ryaji really might not be able to stop him. After thinking carefully, Kokushibo had also made a choice. Kokushibo felt that there was no need to entangle with Ryaji any longer. So Kokushibo took the initiative to withdraw your strength, and then immediately created distance from Ryaji, and then scurry out as a black shadow. Kokushibo's active avoidance of battle was also what Ryaji wanted to see. Ryaji was not afraid of not being able to beat Kokushibo, but rather the situation of Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen was already very serious. If it dragged on longer, it would only be bad for Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen, and it would also cause Ryaji to miss the best treatment opportunity. Because Ryaji's wood spirit energy could really possibly allow Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen's severed limbs to be reattached. Of course, reattaching here did not mean that they would be as good as new immediately, but rather it only temporarily preserved the severed limbs. Afterwards, it would take a very long recovery process to possibly truly recover. If Ryaji repaired the severed limbs non-stop for 24 hours, then it was estimated that it would take a month for the severed limbs to possibly reconnect with the body 100%. And the reattached severed arm must be retrained, so that the arm adapts to the control of the brain. This was also a process that needed to be done step by step, so in the short term, they would definitely not be able to continue to fight. Shinobu Koko, seeing that Kokushibo had run away, then wanted to chase, but was stopped by Ryaji. Don't chase. 531, Chapter 531. Ryaji tightly grabbed Shinobu Koko's disabled arm, not letting Shinobu Koko chase after him. Shinobu Koko was somewhat puzzled by Ryaji's choice, and then blamed Ryaji. Why didn't you chase just now? We have paid such a heavy price, but you let Kokushibo go like this. You have wasted all our efforts. Kyojuro Rengoku was also somewhat puzzled as to why Ryaji did not chase Kokushibo, but Kyojuro Rengoku did not interject in the argument between Shinobu Koko and Ryaji, but Kyojuro Rengoku felt that there must be a reason why Ryaji did not chase. In Shinobu Koko's view, Ryaji was capable of keeping Kokushibo, even if he could not beat Kokushibo, even if he could hold Kokushibo back, as long as he held on until dawn, then Kokushibo would be bound to die. And the reason why Ryaji did not chase was because he felt that there was a chance to prevent Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen from becoming disabled because of this. If Ryaji did not have the ability to reattach Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen's severed limbs, then Ryaji would naturally choose to fight Kokushibo to the death, to avenge Shinobu Koko's severed arm. Facing Shinobu Koko's blame, Ryaji was not angry, but rather said very gently, Kokushibo's death is not as important as reattaching your severed limbs. We can't drag on any longer, I have to treat you quickly. Hearing these words, Shinobu Koko did not react to Ryaji's words, and Shinobu Koko also did not believe that Ryaji had the ability to reattach severed limbs. After all, the severed limbs had been completely separated from the body, and under normal circumstances, there was no possibility of reattaching them. After speaking, Ryaji then released Shinobu Koko, and then carefully searched for Shinobu Koko's severed limbs nearby, and when he saw the other severed limbs, Ryaji also picked them up. After about half a minute, Ryaji then collected all the severed limbs, and immediately used wood spirit energy to maintain the remaining activity of the severed limbs, so as to increase the success rate of reattaching the severed limbs. Come over here. Ryaji said to the stunned Shinobu Koko and Kyojuro Rengoku. Shinobu Koko, seeing that Ryaji was really preparing to reattach the severed limbs for them, then walked towards Ryaji. Kyojuro Rengoku also jumped to Ryaji with difficulty on one leg. At this time Ryaji was in front of Uzui Tengen. Uzui Tengen's injuries were the most serious, so Ryaji planned to stabilize his situation first, and then carry out the reattachment work of the severed limbs. Rengoku, take off your clothes. Ryaji then instructed immediately. Hearing these words, Rengoku did not know what Ryaji wanted to do, but now it was impossible to chase Kokushibo, so he could only do as Ryaji said, and took off his clothes. Ryaji spread Kyojuro Rengoku's clothes on the ground, and then placed the severed limbs of the three on the clothes one by one. Afterwards Ryaji then sat down on the ground, and then began to operate his wood breathing quickly. A large amount of wood spirit energy then volatilized around Ryaji. Ryaji then gathered the wood spirit energy in his hands. One hand's wood spirit energy maintained the activity of the severed limbs, and the other hand's wood spirit energy healed Uzui Tengen. Shinobu Koko and Kyojuro Rengoku did not disturb Ryaji. This was also the first time Ryaji had used wood breathing in front of Shinobu Koko and Kyojuro Rengoku, and Shinobu Koko and Kyojuro Rengoku could also feel the powerful vitality contained in the wood spirit energy. Perhaps Ryaji really had a way to reattach their severed limbs back to their bodies. 532, Chapter 532. In order to speed up the efficiency, Ryaji could be said to have increased the rhythm of wood breathing to a very high level this time, so as to squeeze more wood spirit energy with healing factors from nature faster. But this also extremely consumed Ryaji's physical strength, and at the same time increased the burden on Ryaji's dantian and lungs. After about a few minutes, Uzui Tengen's injuries were temporarily stabilized. After stabilizing Uzui Tengen's situation, Ryaji then said to Shinobu Koko, Shinobu, sit down in front of me, and stretch out your severed arm. Hearing these words, Shinobu Koko then sat down in front of Ryaji, and then stretched out her severed arm somewhat unwillingly. As a girl, and also Ryaji's woman, Shinobu Koko naturally did not want Ryaji to see her like this. Ryaji did not think much about other things, but rather only wanted to reattach Shinobu Koko's arm as soon as possible. Fortunately, the wound of Shinobu Koko's severed limb was very smooth. It was obviously cut off by Kokushibo with a demon blade, but this also reduced the difficulty of Ryaji's connection work. Ryaji took Shinobu Koko's severed limb in his hand, and then aligned it with the fracture of Shinobu Koko. After roughly adjusting the angle, Ryaji then grabbed Shinobu Koko's severed limb with one hand, and grabbed the part of Shinobu Koko's arm that was still retained with the other hand, and then delivery with spirit energy to Shinobu Koko at both ends at the same time. Suddenly, Shinobu Koko felt a burst of glow numb in her arm and a feeling of countless electric currents flowing through. This feeling continued. The reason why Shinobu Koko had this feeling was because Ryaji first started to connect the nerves at the severed limb and fracture, so Shinobu Koko had such a feeling. The process of connecting the nerves took about 5 minutes for Ryaji. Although Ryaji did not connect all the nerves back, Ryaji connected the main nerves back. Afterwards, Ryaji then started to reconnect the muscle tissue. This was also because of the urgency of time, so if Ryaji occupied too much time on Shinobu Koko's body, it was very likely that Kyojuro Rengoku and Uzui Tengen would not have the opportunity to reattach their severed limbs. Therefore, Ryaji first chose to start with the thick nerves, and then to the muscle tissue, so that the severed limbs had at least reconnected with the body. As for the connection of the bone tissue afterwards, and the connection of the remaining nerves, they could be put aside temporarily. And the connection between the bones was the most difficult, and also the most time-consuming, so Ryaji planned to do it last. The connection of the muscle tissue took about 7 or 8 minutes, and Ryaji then reconnected about 30% of the muscles. Lie down temporarily and don't move this hand. Ryaji slowly hold Shinobu Koko, and let her lie down. Although Ryaji said not to move, Shinobu Koko still tried to move her fingers. Under the stimulation of some nerves, Shinobu Koko really saw her fingers tremble slightly. Ryaji noticed Shinobu Koko's actions, and could not help but say again, "Shinobu, don't mess around. Your severed arm has not been completely reconnected yet." Shinobu Koko, after knowing that there was really hope for her arm to be reattached, could not help but be happy in her heart, and the blame on Ryaji suddenly disappeared. Afterwards, Ryaji did the same, and reconnected the severed arms of Kyojuro Rengoku and Uzui Tengen. Because Uzui Tengen had both legs and one arm severed, the situation was the most serious. Ryaji also ranked Uzui Tengen last. This was also a more safe choice. 533, Chapter 533. Just as Ryaji had just reattached the severed leg for Kyojuro Rengoku, Makio and Suma happened to rush back. When the two saw the tragic state of their husband Uzui Tengen, tears welled up in their eyes, and then they both threw down on Uzui Tengen's chest, crying. Uzui Tengen had been conscious ever since he was rescued by Ryaji, and after seeing Makio and Suma, the concern in Uzui Tengen's heart finally settled. The pain of the flesh seemed to disappear completely at that moment. Even if Uzui Tengen died just like that now, he would die without any worries. Now is not the time to cry. All of you get out of the way, stand aside. Ryaji then drove Makio and Suma away at this time. Hearing these words, Makio and Suma were both extremely puzzled, but seeing Ryaji's very serious appearance, the two did not dare to disobey Ryaji, and immediately retreated to the side obediently, but the tears of the two still flowed uncontrollably. Then Ryaji started the reattachment work of the severed limbs for Uzui Tengen. Uzui Tengen looked at Ryaji, his eyes filled with deep gratitude, and said, "Thank you." Although Uzui Tengen's thank you was simple, these two words carried Uzui Tengen's true feelings. Ryaji just nodded to Uzui Tengen, and did not say much, but rather focused on reattaching the severed limbs for Uzui Tengen. Ryaji first started with the arm, because Ryaji felt that the arm was much more important, so he first started with the reattachment of the arm. Makio and Suma watched quietly. At first they did not know what Ryaji was doing, but later they gradually seemed to know what Ryaji was doing. Although this matter seemed so absurd and unrealistic, Ryaji was indeed doing it. Ryaji spent the longest time on Uzui Tengen. It took more than half an hour to complete all the most basic connection work. When Ryaji stopped, the expression on his face could also feel a lot of fatigue. But Ryaji did not end the work just like that, but rather started from Shinobu Koko again, and further completed the remaining connection work. Shinobu Koko could see that Ryaji's body was operating at a high load, but Shinobu Koko did not stop Ryaji. This was not to say that Shinobu Koko did not care about Ryaji, and did not feel sorry for Ryaji, but rather because even if she stopped him, Ryaji would not stop. "Ryaji, be sure not to damage your own body." Although she did not stop him, Shinobu Koko still reminded Ryaji, and let Ryaji do what he could. Mainly Shinobu Koko did not know whether this magical healing technique would have any damage to Ryaji himself, so she was afraid that Ryaji would suffer irreversible damage after reattaching their severed arms. Facing Shinobu Koko's concern, a smile suddenly appeared on Ryaji's tired expression. The second round of connection work took longer than the first round, it almost took more than an hour, and the rain also stopped during this period. After the 2 rounds of connection work were completed, he almost fainted. Fortunately Ryaji finally overcame the feeling of fainting. Shinobu Koko, seeing that Ryaji was about to faint, suddenly became anxious in her heart, and then immediately sat up, and asked worriedly, "Ryaji, are you all right?" However, because the severed arm had been connected to the body, but the damage to the arm had not fully recovered, so Shinobu Koko suddenly moved like this, and she immediately felt the prick pain of the severed arm. 534, Chapter 534. This prick pain made Shinobu Koko's expression suddenly wrinkle. Ryaji immediately turned to Shinobu Koko, and then looked at Shinobu Koko somewhat angrily. Ryaji's anger was naturally because Shinobu Koko had forcibly moved her arm before it had healed, which naturally had an impact on the recovery of the arm. Shinobu Koko also saw Ryaji's angry expression for the first time, and Shinobu Koko suddenly felt that Ryaji's angry expression actually made her feel very cute, and a smile appeared on her face again. "I'm fine, don't move, lie down quickly." Although Ryaji had a trace of anger, he did not say any exciting words, but rather told Shinobu Koko to lie down. At this time, the sky was much brighter, but the sun had not come out. Before long, the people from the hidden unit appeared in the entertainment district with great fanfare, and began to start the aftermath work of the entertainment district. One of the teams came to the place where Ryaji was. After seeing heavyweights such as Ryaji, Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen, the group first respectfully called out to Ryaji, "Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen, Ryaji-sama, Shinobu-sama, Rengoku-sama, Uzui-sama." But at the same time, they also saw the injury situation of Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen, and their hearts could not help but shock. These were pillars. They were actually injured to this extent. Although shocked, they immediately carried out preliminary treatment and bandaging of the external injuries of Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen. And the injuries of Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen had already been controlled by Ryaji, so there was not much processing work left for the hidden unit to carry out. After the hidden unit finished processing the injuries of Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen, Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen were carried onto stretchers. Afterwards, Ryaji followed these hidden unit members to a temporary placement point. Compared to being outside, this place was indeed much better, at least they did not have to lie on the wet ground. After arriving at the placement point, Ryaji ran into Aoi Kenzaki. Aoi Kenzaki, after seeing Ryaji, immediately rushed to Ryaji's side, and then asked very worriedly, "Ryaji-sama, where is Zenitsu?" Looking at Aoi Kenzaki's worried expression, Ryaji patted her shoulder, and then said, "Don't worry, Zenitsu is fine. You should take care of Shinobu, Rengoku, and Uzui first." Hearing these words, Aoi Kenzaki then noticed Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen lying on the stretchers, and immediately Aoi Kenzaki rushed to Shinobu Koko's side, and then asked Shinobu Koko worriedly, "Shinobu-sama, are you alright?" Shinobu Koko smiled at Aoi Kenzaki, and raised her other arm that was not completely healed to touch Aoi Kenzaki's head, and said, "Don't worry. I'm fine. Aoi-chan, how can you be eccentric? My injuries and Uzui's injuries are much more serious than Shinobu's, aren't you planning to care about us?" Kyojuro Rengoku then said to joke with Aoi Kenzaki at this time. Hearing these words, Aoi Kenzaki was also a little embarrassed, but the clever Aoi Kenzaki still replied, "Rengoku-sama, the greetings to you have to take turns." And seeing that Rengoku-sama can still joke, naturally there is no danger to your life. And after Aoi Kenzaki finished speaking, Uzui Tengen suddenly had a crisis situation of rapid breathing. Makio and Suma suddenly became nervous, and then shouted, "Uzui-sama, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me." 535, Chapter 535. Aoi Kenzaki, seeing this situation, immediately became nervous, and then approached Uzui Tengen, and then began to examine Uzui Tengen. Ryaji, however, did not have any action on this, and just stood there watching quietly, because Ryaji saw at the first moment that Uzui Tengen was pretending. As for why Uzui Tengen pretended to be about to be discouraged, it was estimated that it was to cooperate with Kyojuro Rengoku to tease Aoi Kanzaki. So Ryaji did not intend to trouble. Uzui, that's enough. Look at how anxious you've made the child. Shinobu Koko then said to Uzui Tengen at this time. As soon as Shinobu Koko said this, Uzui Tengen recovered, and then joked with Aoi Kanzaki, "Are the two rough men, me and Rengoku, so unnoticeable? I saw that as soon as you met, you only had the handsome guy Ryaji in your eyes." Aoi Kanzaki, seeing that she was being teased, then pointed at Uzui Tengen and said, "You bad guy, you only know how to bully me." As soon as Aoi Kanzaki made such a fuss, Uzui Tengen immediately surrendered, and comforted Aoi Kanzaki. This could be regarded as a kind of relaxation after the fierce battle. After placement, Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen, Makio and Suma stayed behind to take care of the three. And Ryaji changed into a new set of clothes that Aoi Kanzaki had brought him, and then led a small team to bring Tanjiro and the others back. When Ryaji came to the place where Tanjiro was, he found that Tanjiro had actually fallen asleep, and only Inashuk and Hattori Kyujo were awake. Afterwards, Inashuk carried Tanjiro back to the entertainment district, and Nezuko was packed by Ryaji into a mist-fur wooden box and carried back. As for Zenitsu Agitsuma and Hattori Kyujo, they were carried back by the hidden unit members on stretchers. Ryaji and his party stayed in the entertainment district for another 2 to 3 days, and the aftermath work of the entertainment district was then completed. Except for the traces of the battle that had not been completely eliminated, the entertainment district returned to its usual operation. It was just that the news that the famous Warandaki of the Kyogoku house had evaporated from the world was spreading like wildfire in the entertainment district. The reputation of the Kyogoku house was naturally affected to a certain extent. For this reason, the Kyogoku house could only speed up the cultivation of a new Waran, but these were no longer important. And in the 2 or 3 days, Ryaji and Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen summarized all the situations, and then used Kashigai crows to transmit the situation here back to headquarters in written form first. It could be said that in this battle in the entertainment district, although Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen, the 3 pillars, were severely injured, there were at least gains. At least Upper Moon 6 of the 12 Kazuki had been killed. This was a turning point for the Demon Slayer Corps. In the long-term game with Muzan Kibutsuji, the Demon Slayer Corps finally made the situation change. It should be known that after Muzan Kibutsuji established the 12 Kazuki, the 6 Upper Moon demons of the 12 Kazuki had never been defeated in front of the Demon Slayer Corps. The death of Upper Moon 6 could be said to have broken this curse. When this news was transmitted back to the hands of Kaguya Yubayashiki, the head of the Demon Slayer Corps, Kaguya Yubayashiki even vomited blood because of excitement. What a Ryaji! He is truly the lucky star of our Demon Slayer Corps. Kaguya Yubayashiki trembled as he grabbed the letter in his hand, and could not help but say excitedly. 536, Chapter 536. During these 2 or 3 days of Ryaji's recuperation in the entertainment district, he regularly went to carry out recovery treatment on the reconnected severed limbs of Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen every day. Ryaji also spent most of his time basically staying by Shinobu Koko's side, and Uzui Tengen also had his 3 wives to take care of him. As for Kyojuro Rengoku, this bachelor, he could only be envious. And Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Zenitsu Agitsuma all fell into a deep coma. Nezuko and Zenitsu Agitsuma's coma was easy to explain, but Tanjiro's coma was somewhat puzzling. Inashuk, who only suffered minor injuries, seized the opportunity of Tanjiro and Zenitsu Agitsuma's coma, and trained even harder. Hattori Kyujo was quietly nursing her injuries. Ryaji would also take time to visit her. After all, he could not neglect her. In fact, Ryaji did not know Hattori Kyujo very well. Although the time the two spent together was not short, most of it was only spent during teaching. As for Hattori Kyujo's family situation, why she became a demon slayer, Ryaji did not know. And during one of Ryaji's visits to Hattori Kyujo, Hattori Kyujo suddenly said such a sentence to Ryaji, "Can you help me take revenge?" When he heard these words, Ryaji was slightly surprised, but not too surprised. At the same time, Ryaji also knew that Hattori Kyujo might have become a demon slayer because of the belief of revenge. This was actually the reason why most people became demon slayers. And then, Ryaji did not give Hattori Kyujo any reply, but rather asked back. In fact, whether to help Hattori Kyujo take revenge or not, was an indifferent matter for Ryaji. Ryaji wanted to know more about what Hattori Kyujo planned to do after completing the revenge. Regarding this point, Hattori Kyujo had really not thought about it. After successfully taking revenge, what should she do? This time, Hattori Kyujo was silent. Actually, there is nothing to help or not to help. As a member of the Demon Slayer Corps, killing demons is what I can do, and will do. It's just that I killed your revenge target, and then what? Hatred should not become the entirety of your life. Maybe you should think about your life 10 or 20 years later. At that time, you will obviously retire from the front line because of your age. Ryaji, seeing Hattori Kyujo, then said to Hattori Kyujo again. Ryaji would naturally not tell Hattori Kyujo to let go of hatred. This kind of hatred could not be let go, but Ryaji felt that it should not occupy all of Hattori Kyujo. Because helping Hattori Kyujo take revenge was not something that Ryaji could not do, even if Hattori Kyujo's revenge target was Muzan Kibutsuji. If Hattori Kyujo's revenge target was Muzan Kibutsuji, then Muzan Kibutsuji was not only the object of her debt collection, but also the object of everyone in the Demon Slayer Corps to crusade. Captain Ryaji, you think so beautifully. Maybe it's because the upper moon demons can't put pressure on you. Sure enough, strength is the best protection. And I probably won't live that long. Hattori Kyujo could not help but say with emotion. Since joining the Demon Slayer Corps, especially when she had not met Ryaji, Hattori Kyujo had already walked on the edge of death several times, so Hattori Kyujo had already had an awareness of death. Hearing these words, Ryaji did not expect Hattori Kyujo to say such a sudden thing. This look of taking life and death lightly could not help but make people feel a little sad. 537, Chapter 537. However, Ryaji did not say the words, "I will protect you for the rest of your life," to Hattori Kyujo, although such words could make Hattori Kyujo happy. The reason for not saying this was naturally because Ryaji could not guarantee that he could do it. Of course, this was not to say that Ryaji's strength was not good, but if he wanted to protect Hattori Kyujo, then Hattori Kyujo would have to stay away from danger, just like Aoi Kanzaki. Either that, or Hattori Kyujo would follow him all the time, but this was obviously unlikely. And, "I will protect you for the rest of your life," these words more or less carried a bit of confession. Ryaji already had 2 women now, it was really not appropriate to say such words to a girl. This time it was Ryaji's turn to be silent, perhaps because he was from the super-dimensional transcending system, that was why he thought of things so beautifully. Indeed, Ryaji's every choice was to push things in a good direction. Maybe Ryaji was the one who accepted tragedy the most, and was the most fragile. If the people around him suddenly left, Ryaji would be able to understand Hattori Kyujo's feelings. By the way, Captain Ryaji, why did you join the Demon Slayer Corps? I guess you definitely didn't join the Demon Slayer Corps because of the departure of your relatives. Hattori Kyujo, seeing that Ryaji was not speaking, then asked Ryaji again. Hearing these words, Ryaji did not hide it, and then said, "You're right, I really didn't join the Demon Slayer Corps because of hatred. The reason why I joined the Demon Slayer Corps is because of the demon god in my body." This was the first time Hattori Kyujo had heard Ryaji talk about his secrets, and it was also the first time Ryaji had initiative told Hattori Kyujo about this. Regarding the demon god, now besides Tanjiro, Jiyu Tomioka, Seikanji Urokadake, Tamayo, Yushiro, Shinobu Koko, and Kyojuro Rengoku knowing, Hattori Kyujo was another insider that Ryaji initiative explained to. However, Ryaji had not activated Demon God transformation in front of Hattori Kyujo, or rather, Hattori Kyujo was not present when Ryaji activated Demon God transformation. Demon God. Hattori Kyujo was also puzzled. Afterwards, Ryaji then briefly told Hattori Kyujo about the Demon God. Of course, some of the accounts were fabricated by Ryaji. For example, under the drive of the Demon God, he looked for demons to drink the blood of demons, and then he found Nezuko, because Nezuko's blood was very special, it became the demon god's exclusive nourishment. This statement happened to explain the reason why Ryoji must protect Nezuko, and Ryoji was indeed relying on Nezuko's blood to nourish the demon god Devourer, and Nezuko's blood was really special. And the real reason why Ryoji protected Nezuko was naturally not because of this, but because Ryoji's life and Nezuko were bound together. This was the reason why Nezuko could not die. Seeing that Ryoji had said some of his secrets, Hattori Kyujo also talked about her affairs. Hattori Kyujo's family had a security company in the past. Because of the development of the times, and under the pressure of survival, the Hattori family changed the security company into a kendo dojo. And her father was originally a student of the kendo dojo. Because his talent was extremely fast, he suddenly became the most powerful swordsman in the kendo dojo. Hattori Kyujo's grandfather liked Hattori Kyujo's father very much, so he married his daughter to Kyujo's father. Kyujo's father also naturally agreed to the request to marry into the family, and then took over that kendo dojo from Kyujo's grandfather, and managed the kendo dojo in a decent manner. 538 Chapter 538 And Hattori Kyujo had lived a carefree and extremely happy life since she was born. But the good times did not last long. In the year when Hattori Kyujo was 10 years old, she encountered a tragic event that Hattori Kyujo could not forget. A demon invaded Hattori Kyujo's family's kendo dojo, intending to kidnap Hattori Kyujo and her mother. But Hattori Kyujo's father was awakened by the demon's smell after the demon entered the family's bedroom. Afterwards Hattori Kyujo's father took a knife and started a fierce battle with the demon. The sleeping Hattori Kyujo and her mother were also awakened because of this. With his superb swordsmanship, Hattori Kyujo's father easily cut off the demon's arms. He thought that the matter was resolved, but Hattori Kyujo saw the demon's cut-off arms grow back again, and was immediately shocked. Knowing that he had encountered a monster, Hattori Kyujo's father did not panic, but rather immediately ordered Hattori Kyujo's mother to take Hattori Kyujo away. And the demon seemed to know that the man had some tricks, and became serious, and punched Hattori Kyujo's father out of the door. Afterwards, the demon turned to Hattori Kyujo and her mother. It seemed that he was only coming for Hattori Kyujo and her mother. It was also at that moment when the demon turned around. Hattori Kyujo's eyes, which had extraordinary vision, clearly saw the demon's appearance. In that state, even if it was only a short second, the picture could be like a photo, frozen and preserved in Hattori Kyujo's mind. That very refined yellow-haired man, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, but that smile seemed so strange in that situation. The most important thing was that there were words on the man's eyes, and those words were Upper Moon and 2. At that time, Hattori Kyujo did not know that the man was a demon. This was only known afterwards. And the movement in the bedroom also alerted Hattori Kyujo's grandfather at the first moment. Hattori Kyujo's grandfather then came with a knife, and then drew his knife and slashed at Upper Moon 2. The two immediately fought together. Hattori Kyujo's father also endured the severe pain of his body, and rushed into the room again, and again shouted to the mother and daughter who had been frightened, "Go quickly. This guy is a monster." Hattori Kyujo's mother then reacted, and ran out of the room with the young Hattori Kyujo, and while Hattori Kyujo's mother was running out, a flying iron fan from Upper Moon 2 instantly cut off Hattori Kyujo's mother's legs. Hattori Kyujo's mother immediately screamed, but knowing that she could not run away, Hattori Kyujo's mother then told Hattori Kyujo to run away quickly by herself. At that time, Hattori Kyujo was unwilling, but under her mother's scolding, Hattori Kyujo reluctantly abandoned her mother and ran away. And just as Hattori Kyujo turned around and ran away, Upper Moon 2 threw another iron fan at Hattori Kyujo, seemingly not intending to let Hattori Kyujo go. Hattori Kyujo's grandfather, who was eager to protect his granddaughter, sacrificed himself to block Upper Moon 2's iron fan for Hattori Kyujo, and in the end, Hattori Kyujo's grandfather died on the spot. Hattori Kyujo's father, who was in pain from losing his family, burst out with amazing energy. Although he could not kill Upper Moon 2, he held Upper Moon 2 back. This also bought enough time for Hattori Kyujo to escape, but in the end, Hattori Kyujo's father, mother, and grandfather all died at the hands of Upper Moon 2. 539 Chapter 539 After listening to Hattori Kyujo tell Ryoji about her tragic past one by one, she then said, "The Upper Moon demons are too powerful. With my ability it is unlikely that I can avenge my family, but Captain Ryaji, you have the ability to do it. I can see that the upper moon demons pose no threat to you at all. The reason why Hattori Kyujo made this somewhat unreasonable request to Ryaji at this time was actually because she saw Ryaji's power and ability to press upper moon demons. If Ryaji did not have this powerful strength, Hattori Kyujo would not have asked Ryaji to help her take revenge. If Ryaji's strength was not enough, Hattori Kyujo's request would be somewhat difficult, and very stupid. Hearing these words, Ryaji could not help but smile, neither denying nor acknowledging. The upper moon demons, for Ryaji, did not have much threat, but if Ryaji wanted to kill the upper moon demons, he would indeed need to put in some effort. Don't worry, the remaining upper moons and Muzan Kibutsuji of the 12 Kazuki are all targets that the Demon Slayer Corps wants to eliminate. This cannot be rushed. Ryaji knew that Hattori Kyujo wanted to use his hand to eliminate Upper Moon too, who had the hatred of killing her relatives. But this kind of thing could not be rushed, unless Upper Moon 2 was in front of him now. Captain Ryaji, I have another request. If conditions permit, I hope that you can let Upper Moon 2 die in front of me. Hattori Kyujo finally made a more willful request to Ryaji. The only person Hattori Kyujo could make willful requests to now was probably Ryaji. Because besides her trainer, Ryaji was her second mentor in life. I've noted the matter. But I still hope that you can think more about your future. You are not alone now, you still have everyone, this group of people who are not family but are like family. It's getting late, rest early. We should be returning to headquarters tomorrow. After Ryaji said goodbye to Hattori Kyujo at the end, he left the room where Hattori Kyujo was. And Hattori Kyujo was not alone in a room, but rather in a room with the comatose Tanjiro and Zenitsu Agatsuma. After Ryaji left, he could not help but mutter, this girl really needs someone to rely on. Should I introduce this girl to Tomioka, that block of wood? Thinking of Jiyu Tomioka and Hattori Kyujo being matched together, Ryaji could not help but shake his head with a chuckle. The next day. On this day, Ryaji and his party followed the hidden unit and left the entertainment district with great fanfare. After several days of trek, they finally returned to headquarters. The reason why it took a long time to go back was because the speed of the march was not fast. This was also to take care of the feelings of the injured, and there was no need to rush so much in the current situation. After returning to headquarters, and placing the injured personnel, Ryaji and Shinobu Koko were summoned the next day to hold a pillar meeting. The pillar meeting was generally held once every 6 months, and would also be held if there were more special or urgent situations. Like the Mugen train incident and this trip to the entertainment district, because these two actions encountered Upper Moon demons, they were regarded as special situations. After all, the Demon Slayer Corps did not have many opportunities to contact the Upper Moon demons, so any matter about the Upper Moon demons and Muzan Kibutsuji would be taken extremely seriously. 540, Chapter 540. What's more, this time they also killed an Upper Moon, so holding a pillar meeting was also reasonable. The reason why Shinobu Koko did not absent was because her injuries were the lightest. Even if her severed arm was not reattached, it would not affect her going to the meeting. And Shinobu Koko's reattached severed arm now had a cast on it. This was also to better fix the arm, and reduce the probability of the arm healing out of place, otherwise the arm growing crooked would be a bit unsightly. As for Kyojuro Rengoku and Uzui Tengen, they could not attend this meeting because of their severe injuries. When Ryaji and Shinobu Koko arrived at the meeting hall of the Yubayashiki residence, the others had already been waiting here early, and after the two arrived, everyone's eyes focused on Ryaji and Shinobu Koko. This might be because Ryaji had carried Shinobu Koko in a princess carry, because Shinobu Koko's hand injury, carrying her on his back would affect Shinobu Koko's hand, so Ryaji could only do a princess carry. But in this way, the two looked very intimate, and attracted the attention of the other pillars. However, no one discussed anything, but rather just quietly looked at the two. The eyes of Sanemi Shinazugawa, the wind pillar, carried a trace of hostility in everyone's eyes. Although he did not have any disrespect for Ryaji now, he still held a grudge for being injured by Ryaji last time, and had never let go of this matter. And Ryaji's position in the Demon Slayer Corps was also getting higher and higher, and he could now stand shoulder to shoulder with the pillars. It was also difficult for Sanemi Shinazugawa to find an opportunity to challenge Ryaji. At the same time, this was also not allowed. After all, Ryaji and Sanemi Shinazugawa were both powerful pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps, any injury to either of them would affect the situation. Although Sanemi Shinazugawa did not quit Ryaji in his heart, he knew Ryaji's power in his heart. This was a very contradictory state. If they really had to fight, then the current Sanemi Shinazugawa was no longer Ryaji's opponent. If it was back then when they returned from Mount Nadagumo, if the two really had to fight, Sanemi Shinazugawa could really defeat Ryaji. Shinobu Koko, seeing that everyone was looking at her and Ryaji, did not have any shyness in her heart, but rather looked at everyone with a smile, and initiative greeted, "Hello everyone. I'm very happy to see everyone again. I almost didn't make it back from the trip to the entertainment district." At this time, Mitsurai Kanroji carefully and curiously asked, Are you already dating? How happy." Although everyone knew in their hearts that Ryaji and Shinobu Koko had likely developed together, the parties had not given a positive response to this matter, and they would naturally not care too much about this. Only Mitsurai Kanroji, as a girl, would ask this. "Yes. It's not a major matter, so there is no need to announce it," Shinobu Koko admitted. "When will I also have a satisfactory husband?" Mitsurai Kanroji fantasized with anticipation. "It will happen," Shinobu Koko echoed. Afterwards, Ryaji then put Shinobu Koko down in the seat she was sitting in, and Ryaji also sat down in the empty seat next to her, and the atmosphere became silence again. In this kind of serious occasion, it was really not a place to show affection, so Ryaji and Shinobu Koko did not have too many actions, but rather quietly sat in their seats and waited for Kaguya Yubayashiki's arrival. 541, Chapter 541. After Ryaji and Shinobu Koko took their seats, the gazes of the others then shifted away. Only Jiyu Tomioka and Mitsurai Kanroji's gazes remained on Ryaji. Mitsurai Kanroji's gaze carried envy and admiration, while Jiyu Tomioka's eyes were full of worries. After waiting for a moment, Kaguya Yubayashiki, supported by a beautiful white-haired woman and her two daughters, came to the meeting hall. Just from Kaguya Yubayashiki's state, it could be clearly seen that there was a big difference from the way he looked half a year ago. It seemed that his physical condition was even more serious. This could be seen not only from the fact that he needed someone to support to walk, but also from Kaguya Yubayashiki's diseased appearance. Previously only the upper half of his face was affected by the disease, now the entire face had been completely diseased, looking even more terrifying. Besides his face, other parts of Kaguya Yubayashiki's body had actually begun to lesions, but they were covered by clothing. Also different from before was that pair of eyes. That pair of eyes had become even more turbid. With the support of his family, Kaguya Yubayashiki then sat down in his main seat, and his wife and two daughters were waiting quietly by his side. After Kaguya Yubayashiki sat down, he coughed, and after his breathing smoothed out, he weakly said, "Everyone has arrived, right? May the master be well." Except for Ryaji, everyone said in unison. Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife said to him, "Except for Rengoku-sama and Uzui-sama who are seriously injured and did not attend, everyone else has arrived." Kaguya Yubayashiki nodded. Kyojuro Rengoku and Uzui Tengen could not attend the meeting because of their injuries. This was understandable. Then let's proceed with the meeting. The trip to the entertainment district is enough to prove that Muzan Kibutsuji has a strong desire to kill Tanjiro, causing him to send out Kokushibo, the head of the upper moons again. This is a good thing for us. Only when Muzan Kibutsuji is more unable to restrain himself, will we have the opportunity to catch his foxtail. However, the injuries of Shinobu, Rengoku, and Uzui also prove Kokushibo's power. Although we did not kill Kokushibo this time, Kokushibo also returned without success. Being able to make Kokushibo return without success, this can be regarded as a relatively good result. Kaguya Yubayashiki then began to speak unhurriedly. At this time, Sanemi Shinazugawa then interjected, "If I had gone to the entertainment district at that time, I would have definitely been able to kill Kokushibo." Although Sanemi Shinazugawa's words were somewhat of a hindsight, Sanemi Shinazugawa was not saying that he could kill Kokushibo alone, but rather that he could do it with the cooperation of Shinobu Koko, Kyojuro Rengoku, and Uzui Tengen, so his words did not mean to boast. Yes, it's really a pity. If we had known that there were 3 upper moons in the entertainment district at that time, we could have wiped them out in one fell swoop. Mitsurai Kanroji also felt it was a pity. In the news that Uzui Tengen sent back at that time, it was mentioned that it was estimated that there would be 2 upper moons encirclement and suppressing Ryaji and Tanjiro. And judging from Muzan Kibutsuji's timid style of doing things, no one would have thought that Muzan Kibutsuji would send out half of the upper moon demons to complete this scheme. 542, Chapter 542. So 2 upper moons were the most likely result that everyone thought, so Shinobu Koko and Kyojuro Rengoku were sent to support, plus Ryaji and Uzui Tengen. Dealing with 2 upper moons was obviously enough. But no one could have imagined that one of those executing Muzan Kibutsuji's instructions in the entertainment district would be Kokushibo, the head of the upper moons. What was even more unexpected was that Kokushibo's strength was so terrifying, he was actually able to press 3 pillars, and seriously injure them. If Ryaji had come a little later at that time, then what Ryaji would have seen would have been 3 corpses. It could be said that the Demon Slayer Corps had miscalculated this time. Although we did not kill Kokushibo, judging from the news from Ryaji, Upper Moon 6 of the 12 Kazuki, Daki, who was entrenched in the entertainment district as Enwaran, has been confirmed to have been killed, and Upper Moon 3, who was responsible for containing Ryaji, was also seriously injured and escaped. The death of the first Upper Moon of the 12 Kazuki is a good thing for the Demon Slayer Corps. This breaks the curse that the pillars are no match for the upper moons. Before this, we have had too many pillars die at the hands of the upper moon demons. Kaguya Yubayashiki then continued. Upper Moon 6, that's the upper moon ranked at the very bottom. Ranked at the very bottom, their strength obviously won't be too strong. If it were me, I could also kill them. Obanai Iguro, the serpent pillar, then interjected, not at all surprised by Ryaji killing Upper Moon 6, and did not feel that Ryaji had done a very remarkable thing, and even had an attitude of, if it were me, I could also do it. Obanai is right, we just lacked the opportunity to meet the upper moons. Sanemi Shinazugawa then echoed. Ryaji did not care about this at all. Ryaji also did not feel that killing Upper Moon 6 was something worth boasting about. If Obanai Iguro could kill Upper Moon 6, then that was his business. I also really want to fight with the upper moons. Muichiro Tokaido said blankly. I think that this time the upper moons returned without success. It is estimated that there will hardly be such an opportunity again. The continuous failures of the Mugen train and the entertainment district will probably make Muzan Kibutsuji even more cautious. Gyomei Heimjima, who was calm and composed, did not join in awning Ryaji, but rather analyzed the situation afterwards. Jiyu Tomioka was as silent as ever, and did not participate in the discussion. What Heimjima said also makes sense. Muzan Kibutsuji's successive failures will indeed make Muzan Kibutsuji even more cautious. But this is also good, it can give Shinobu, Rengoku, and Uzui time to recover. Kaguya Yubayashiki then said. Ryaji, do you have anything to say? At this time, Kaguya Yubayashiki then initiative asked Ryaji. Hearing these words, Ryaji shook his head, and then said, Go. Seeing that Ryaji did not mean to speak, Kaguya Yubayashiki did not force it, and then asked, Ryaji, the news said that you activated the mark, is that right? Hearing these words, Ryaji then nodded, not denying, that is indeed the case. Can you talk about how you activated the mark? Among the 9 pillars, besides Gyomei Heimjima activating the mark, the others have not yet touched that stage. Kaguya Yubayashiki then continued to ask. After the others knew that Ryaji had activated the mark, they could not help but look at Ryaji. Being asked like this, Ryaji also did not know how to answer. This mark was a system task reward. Ryaji really did not know how to unlock this ability. 543, Chapter 543. However, Ryaji still pondered for a while, sorted out his thoughts, and then began to speak. The mark is a state, only after the body reaches a certain critical point can it enter that state. We all know what you're saying. Sanemi Shinazugawa, seeing Ryaji talking nonsense, could not help but interrupt Ryaji's account. Sanemi. Kaguya Yubayashiki immediately signaled Sanemi Shinazugawa to not interrupt Ryaji's account casually, although what Ryaji said just now was actually known by the pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps. Interrupting Ryaji's words was a sign of disrespect. Sanemi Shinazugawa immediately turned his head to the side, and stopped speaking. At this time, Ryaji then continued, if you really want to talk about the most basic conditions for activating the mark, that is to keep the heartbeat above 200 beats per minute. Afterwards, the body temperature will rapidly increase, reaching a temperature of 40 degrees or even higher, and the blood throughout the body will feel like it is boiling. Only by forcing the body into a state of extreme can you enter this state, that is to say, the conditions for activating the mark cannot be reached under normal training. Plus, the body will have a self-protection mechanism. After the body load reaches a critical point, people will either faint, or lose strength. Only when the willpower in the heart is strong enough can you break through this critical point. Ryaji was recalling the feeling of activating the mark, and then combined it with his own analysis, and summarized the matter. As for whether doing this could really activate the mark, Ryaji did not know. Hearing these words, everyone could also hear how harsh the conditions were. Breaking through the body's limits would not be an easy thing, but it was a very dangerous thing, because if you were not careful, you would die suddenly because the body could not withstand the state after breaking through the limits. This was a bit like the phoenix rebirth from the ashes, the butterfly emerging from the cocoon. If it did not succeed, it would be death. And Ryaji's mark was unlocked by the system, so he naturally skipped this dangerous step. After Ryaji activated the mark, when he woke up the next day, he rarely felt sore all over his body. That kind of soreness almost made it impossible to move. In the end, Ryaji still had to rely on the recovery of wood breathing to recover. So Ryaji could feel the burden on the body of opening the mark. I think what Ryaji said is very right. The mark does put a lot of burden on the body. This is also why the swordsmen who activate the mark do not live long. Gyomei Haimjima also very much agreed with Ryaji's words. Ryaji heard Gyomei Haimjima's words, and then asked with some surprise, does the mark affect lifespan? Regarding the mark affecting lifespan, Ryaji really did not know. Ryaji only knew that activating the mark put a lot of burden on the body. Yes, people who activate the mark do not live long. According to the historical records of the Demon Slayer Corps, people who activate the mark do not live past 25 years old. Kaguya Yubayashiki then told Ryaji without hiding anything. This was actually something that these pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps knew. Although they knew, they did not stop their steps of pursuing it. Because the swordsmen who could activate the mark were very powerful existences in history, the representative of this was the swordsman who created the first breathing technique, Yoriaki Tsujikuni. 544, Chapter 544. And the reason why the pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps were not afraid of this was because their mission itself was full of danger. If they did not master a method that could make them stronger, they would only die faster. In this way, activating the mark was the choice that could allow them to live a little longer, and it was also the choice that could more likely kill the upper moons and Muzan Kibutsuji. Secondly, mastering the activation method and activating the mark were two different concepts. Mastering the activation method meant that they could try to activate it at the critical moment of life and death. If the activation was successful, then they might be able to live. However, after hearing the news that they would not live past 25 years old, Ryaji immediately inquired about his lifespan from the system, and after inquiring that he still had 78 years of lifespan, Ryaji was not so worried. At least this curse would not affect him. But Ryaji was still curious and asked Gyomei Haimjima, then Haimjima Aniki, how old are you this year? Ryaji's call of Aniki was naturally to show respect for Gyomei Haimjima, and Gyomei Haimjima's giant physique was also suitable for the title of Aniki. At the same time, Ryaji also knew from Shinobu Koko that Gyomei Haimjima was the oldest in the Demon Slayer Corps. 27. Gyomei Haimjima replied indifferently. Hearing these words, Ryaji was somewhat surprised. Wasn't it said that they would not live past 25 years old? Now he had lived to 27, hadn't he? Seeming to know that Ryaji was somewhat puzzled, Gyomei Haimjima then said again, there are exceptions to everything, but this does not mean that I can live a long life. Perhaps if I activate the mark again next time, I will die. It's hard to say. Ryaji also understood at once. This situation varied from person to person. It was possible that most of the swordsmen who had activated the mark before had died at the age of 25. Ryaji felt that the reason why Gyomei Haimjima could live past 25 years old might be related to his physique. After all, Gyomei Haimjima's giant, burly, and strong physique was not something that ordinary people could have. Could it be because of the body's strength? Maybe if you train the body to be strong enough, perhaps activating the mark will not damage the lifespan. Ryaji then said his speculation. This also has some truth. I have also pondered the reasons for this before. It's just that it is difficult for someone to train their body to my level. Gyomei Haimjima also expressed his agreement with this. And the conversation between Ryaji and Gyomei Haimjima was actually something that others could not interject in, because the others had not activated the mark, and did not know the specific conditions for how to activate the mark. The only thing they could do was to quietly receive the useful information in Ryaji and Gyomei Haimjima's words. Let's stop talking about the mark for now. Because there are too few records about the mark, perhaps the mark has not been perfected yet, that's why it causes people to shorten their lifespan. I think what Ryaji and Haimjima said is very reasonable. Before you activate the mark, you can start by strengthening your body first. Kaguya Yubayashiki then spoke at this time to temporarily pull the topic back. Hearing these words, Ryaji and Gyomei Haimjima no longer talked about it. Ryaji, I still have something to ask you. The news also said that you have mastered a magical healing technique, and you also used this magical healing technique to reattach the severed limbs of Shinobu, Rengoku, and Uzui. Can you talk about this healing technique? Kaguya Yubayashiki then continued to ask Ryaji. 545, Chapter 545. As soon as Kaguya Yubayashiki said these words, everyone was shocked. This was even more shocking than Ryaji activating the mark. Reattaching severed arms, even with the current level of medical technology, could not be done. As long as the limbs were separated from the torso, there was no possibility of reattaching them. Even with the level of modern medicine, even if it could be done, it would be an extremely complex and difficult task. And Ryaji's wood spirit energy, whether in terms of efficiency or recovery effect, was more advanced and magical than conventional modern medical surgery. The magic of wood spirit energy was unmatched by traditional modern medicine. Is there really such a magical thing? Mitsurai Kanroji's gaze shifted to Ryaji again, looking at Ryaji with a curious and admiring expression. Ryaji is so handsome. It would be great if he was still single. At the same time, Mitsurai Kanroji could not help but mutter to herself in her heart. Shinobu Koko remained silent, although she was a personal witness to this matter, and knew the magic of Ryaji's healing technique. Shinobu Koko did not mean to boast about this matter. Ryaji also knew that it was normal for his abilities to be displayed and known to everyone, so Ryaji did not mean to hide it, and then explained, that kind of healing technique is actually a breathing technique. I call this breathing technique wood breathing. Ryaji announced the wood breathing word by word. It was certainly impossible to hide that he could use 3 kinds of breathing at the same time, so Ryaji simply said everything. Hearing Ryaji's words, everyone's eyes were all focused on Ryaji. Oh, a new breathing technique. Kaguya Yubayashiki was also quite surprised when he heard this, but he was quite happy in his heart, because the more powerful Ryaji was, the better it was for the Demon Slayer Corps. That's right, but this breathing technique is more special. It is not very suitable for combat, and the breathing technique has only explored and developed one move. As you have learned, the wood breathing has the effect of healing the body, and recovering the body's damage. Although the recovery speed may not be as powerful as the demons, it can still play a role in inhibiting the deterioration of injuries and accelerating the healing of injuries. In general, wood breathing is still in the initial stage of exploration and development, and it is a type of breathing technique that belongs to the auxiliary type. Ryaji then continued. Ryaji is so amazing. He can actually use 2 kinds of breathing. Mitsurai Kanroji could not help but start boasting about Ryaji. And Sanemi Shinazugawa secretly gritted his teeth. He could not accept that Ryaji had already walked in front of everyone in just a few months, and had also opened a large distance, becoming the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps. Of course, Sanemi Shinazugawa was not jealous, but rather felt that it was very unlucky that he had never encountered an upper moon since he became a pillar for so long. Since it is auxiliary breathing, can we other pillars also learn and master it? If we other pillars all master this wood breathing, then it would be of great help to us and the Demon Slayer Corps. Obanai Iguro then interjected at this time. He was very interested in Ryaji's wood breathing. Hearing these words, Ryaji also saw Obanai Iguro's intention, and could not help but smile. 546, Chapter 546. Ryaji knew that Obanai Iguro might also want to learn this wood breathing, but Ryaji did not mean to not share it. After all, wood breathing was not something that was so easy to master. Whether Obanai Iguro could learn it or not was still unknown. After all, Obanai Iguro was no longer a blank sheet of paper, and it was not an easy thing to master a kind of breathing at this time. Even if he mastered it, it would be a difficult thing to improve wood breathing to the height of the realm that Ryaji had reached. After all, only after mastering the essence of wood breathing or even its mysteries could wood breathing have a very considerable healing effect. If he only mastered a little bit of fur, then the role it could play would be extremely small. Of course, Ryaji did not mean that he did not want others to be able to master wood breathing. It was just that it was relatively unrealistic to have a large number of people master wood breathing now. Want to learn? I'll teach you. Ryaji teased Obanayaguro. Hearing these words, Obanayaguro was not affected, but rather replied lightly, I am just expressing my question. In theory, there is no problem with mastering two kinds of breathing. As for whether you can learn it or not, it depends on the individual. If you want to learn, I can also teach you. Ryaji replied. After speaking, Ryaji then looked at Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife, and then said, the master's wife should not have learned breathing, right? Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife, seeing Ryaji suddenly talking to her, then replied, oh, what's wrong? Then madam is the most suitable person to learn wood breathing, only those who have not learned breathing can more easily accept new things. Ryaji then said. Hearing these words, Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife politely refused, I am just an ordinary woman, learning breathing is too unrealistic for me, and besides, the master cannot leave my care. Madam might as well try, if you master it, you can always take care of the master's body. Although it should not be able to completely cure the master's disease, it can slow down the rate of deterioration of the disease. Ryaji continued to persuade. In fact, letting Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife learn wood breathing was also to extend Kaguya Yubayashiki's life, and perhaps there would be unexpected changes in Kaguya Yubayashiki's body after receiving the nourishment of wood spirit energy for a long time. Ryaji, my wife really can't get away. If possible, let my child go and learn from you. Kaguya Yubayashiki then proposed at this time. Kaguya Yubayashiki made this arrangement naturally had his own plans. If Kaguya Yubayashiki's condition was not so serious, Kaguya Yubayashiki would definitely have no objection to letting his wife learn wood breathing, but now Kaguya Yubayashiki's physical condition must be taken care of by someone at all times. Hearing these words, Ryaji did not say anything more. Ryaji proposed to let Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife learn wood breathing from him. It was not that Ryaji had any thoughts about Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife, but rather that Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife was not cursed, and was a person with a very healthy body. After all, using wood breathing to treat others would have a certain burden on oneself. If he let Kaguya Yubayashiki's children come to learn, they would probably only be able to use wood breathing to regulate their own bodies, and could not regulate their father, because if they did that, their already weak bodies would probably not be able to withstand that kind of consumption. 547, Chapter 547. So Ryaji proposed to let Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife learn. After all, as Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife, she was the most suitable candidate. Very well. Ryaji knew that Kaguya Yubayashiki might be considering his descendants, and he seemed to have seen his ending very clearly. If you all want to learn, you can go to Ryaji for advice. I believe Ryaji will also be happy to get along with everyone in harmony. Although Ryaji has not joined the Demon Slayer Corps for a long time, as a rising star of the Demon Slayer Corps, he already has the qualifications to become a pillar, so he should be respected by everyone. Kaguya Yubayashiki said for Ryaji again. Kaguya Yubayashiki's words were more for Sanemi Shinazugawa to hear, because among all the pillars, Sanemi Shinazugawa had the most impulsive personality. So Sanemi Shinazugawa fought with Ryaji last time. Fortunately Ryaji was a person who knew how to distinguish between right and wrong, so the situation did not develop to a very serious level. However, Kaguya Yubayashiki knew that Sanemi Shinazugawa was very unconvinced at that time. Yes. Everyone also responded. Ryaji, please take care of me in the future. Mitsurai Kenroji took the opportunity to wave to Ryaji. And at this time, the taciturn Jiyu Tomioka then said, Master, I have something to say. Jiyu Tomioka's words also attracted everyone's attention at once, because Jiyu Tomioka was a boring jar in the minds of all the pillars, and had never initiative spoken during meetings. Except for the necessary intelligence reports, Jiyu Tomioka would only speak. So Jiyu Tomioka suddenly initiatively wanting to speak, this could indeed attract everyone's attention. Everyone was curious about what Jiyu Tomioka wanted to say. Say what you have to say, Jiyu. Kaguya Yubayashiki permitted Jiyu Tomioka to speak. I want to pass the position of water pillar to my junior brother Ryaji. Jiyu Tomioka said very seriously and solemnly. After Jiyu Tomioka finished speaking, everyone was silent again. Ryaji also did not have any happy expression, because Ryaji was not cold with the title. Jiyu-senpai, the name of the pillar is not something that can be casually given to someone. Ryaji then said at this time. Ryaji is right, the name of the pillar is not just as simple as a name, honor, and status, it is more of a responsibility. Jiyu, by doing this, you are pushing the responsibility all to Ryaji. Kaguya Yubayashiki also disagreed with Jiyu Tomioka's decision in his heart. Although Kaguya Yubayashiki knew that Ryaji had the qualifications and ability to become a pillar, Kaguya Yubayashiki did not make Ryaji a pillar. This was also because Jiyu Tomioka held the position of water pillar. If he gave Ryaji a pillar name again, it would make the pillar name extremely price drop, so Kaguya Yubayashiki did not seal up any title to Ryaji. Kaguya Yubayashiki also knew that Ryaji did not care about these. And the name of the water pillar was also obtained by Jiyu Tomioka relying on his own ability, so Kaguya Yubayashiki would naturally not casually deprive Jiyu Tomioka's pillar name. As a pillar, you cannot casually abandon your identity, except for being killed in battle, or being unable to fight again due to injuries, and the influence of irresistible factors such as age. Can you give up your position? Kaguya Yubayashiki then continued. I know these, but the name of the water pillar is for the strongest water-breathing user. I am not the strongest, so I should retire. 548, Chapter 548. Jiyu Tomioka again found a reason that sounded very reasonable to retire. It could be seen from his firm tone that he seemed to really want to give this position to the more qualified Ryaji. And Kaguya Yubayashiki actually knew the real reason for Jiyu Tomioka's retirement in his heart. This might also be a knot in Jiyu Tomioka's heart. But it was also because of that time that Jiyu Tomioka became stronger, and took over the name of water pillar from his master Seikanji Urokadake. However, the name of the pillar seemed to have become his burden, making him work even harder. However, Ryaji still did not mean to take over the position, but rather said very modestly, Jiyu-senpai, the name of the water pillar was earned by you with your life, it should belong to you. In terms of water breathing alone, I am really not as good as you. After all, I learned a wood breathing, I learned a bit, so my water breathing is not pure enough, I cannot become the water pillar. No, you are qualified, I see his shadow in you. Jiyu Tomioka said very firmly. Jiyu, escaping cannot solve any problems. Kaguya Yubayashiki then reminded Jiyu Tomioka. I am not escaping. I am just letting the name of the water pillar return to the person it belongs to. Jiyu Tomioka explained. Your behavior of retiring is escaping, not only escaping the responsibility of being a pillar, but also escaping the past that you cannot let go of. Have you not let go of what happened back then? Kaguya Yubayashiki continued to say to Jiyu Tomioka, seemingly wanting to use this opportunity to let Jiyu Tomioka let go of the burden in his heart. This time, Jiyu Tomioka was stunned, his mind suddenly seemed to return to what Kaguya Yubayashiki said back then. It was because Kaguya Yubayashiki knew each pillar extremely well, understood their past, and constantly gave them spiritual comfort. This was one of the reasons why the pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps trusted Kaguya Yubayashiki. Ryaji was somewhat puzzled. Whose shadow did Jiyu Tomioka see in him, to actually make him give up the position of water pillar? But the more this was the case, the more Ryaji could not let Jiyu Tomioka succeed. And when Kaguya Yubayashiki finished saying these words, he could not help but cough violently. Master. The others were somewhat anxious. And Kaguya Yubayashiki's wife went to pat her husband's back and smooth his breathing at the first moment. Tomioka made the master angry. What to do? Mitsurai Kanroji could not help but worry secretly in her heart. Tomioka, if anything happens to the master, you cannot escape responsibility. The irritable Sanemi Shinazugawa said to Jiyu Tomioka fiercely. Jiyu Tomioka did not speak again, seemingly also afraid that saying anything more would make Kaguya Yubayashiki's situation serious. With the help of his wife, Kaguya Yubayashiki recovered in a short while, and then said to everyone, I'm fine, this is not Jiyu's fault. It's my own body's reason. The reason why Kaguya Yubayashiki was like this was not because he was angered by Jiyu Tomioka. Since he was young, because of his weak body, Kaguya Yubayashiki had never been angry, and had never been angry. The cough just now was also because he had said too much during the meeting, and had consumed a lot of energy. Jiyu, even for your deceased sworn friend, the name of the water pillar should not be given to Ryaji, because the name of the water pillar is not just a name for you, but also something you need to protect. Kaguya Yubayashiki finally persuaded Jiyu Tomioka. 549, Chapter 549. In the end, Jiyu Tomioka did not say anything more. It was unknown whether he had listened to this matter in his heart. This gathering meeting also ended after the subsequent summary. After the others saw off Kaguya Yubayashiki, they left one by one, and Ryaji, Shinobu Koko, and Jiyu Tomioka were left in the meeting hall. Ryaji stood up, and then walked to Jiyu Tomioka, and then patted him on the shoulder, and said, "If that sworn friend of yours had not died, the person who became the water pillar might have been him, not you. That's what you think, right? Although I don't know how he died, you, as his sworn friend, should have secured the position of water pillar. What's it like to let it go? Besides you, no one is more suitable to replace him and accept this position." Jiyu Tomioka looked at Ryaji, and did not give any answer. Ryaji had said everything he needed to say, so he did not mean to stay, turned around and came to Shinobu Koko, then hugged her up, and left the meeting hall. On the way back, Ryaji then curiously asked Shinobu Koko, "Shinobu, do you know about Jiyu's matter?" Hearing these words, Shinobu Koko shook her head, and then said, "I don't know, Jiyu is a very withdrawn person, I don't know much about his affairs." Seeing that Shinobu Koko did not know, Ryaji did not ask any more questions. Should we consider having a child?" Shinobu Koko then suddenly asked Ryaji at this time. Ryaji did not mean to be shy, but rather curiously asked back, "Why do you want a child?" "If we have a child, the Demon Slayer Corps will have one less pillar." Shinobu Koko naturally knew about this. If she wanted a child, then she would definitely have to withdraw from the front line, because being pregnant for 10 months, and then having to feed the child after it was born, would be a very time-consuming matter. However, the reason why Shinobu Koko suddenly mentioned this was because Ryaji had activated the mark, so even if Ryaji could live past 25 years old like the rock pillar Gyomei Haimjima, Shinobu Koko was just afraid of that 1 in 10,000 chance. Ryaji was 22 years old now. 5 years had passed since Ryaji had transmigrated to the world of Demon Slayer. It had to be said that time flew by. It was because Ryaji was 22 years old now, so in order to prevent accidents, Shinobu Koko wanted to leave a descendant for Ryaji and herself. If Shinobu Koko knew that Ryaji could live to be 100 years old, she probably would not have the idea of having children now. "Didn't you activate the mark?" "I'm afraid that if you die, it would be good to have a descendant," Shinobu Koko replied. Seeing that Shinobu Koko was worried about him, Ryaji felt a warmth in his heart, because he was holding Shinobu Koko, so Ryaji's hands could not be freed, so he had to bring his face closer, and rubbed Shinobu Koko's nose with his nose. "Let's wait until your injuries are healed before considering the matter of having children," Ryaji said to Shinobu Koko with a smile. After carrying Shinobu Koko back to the butterfly mansion, Kaneo had already prepared lunch. Ryaji first fed Shinobu Koko, and then simply ate himself. Kaneo also left to visit Tanjiro after finishing lunch. Ryaji then rested simply, and began to use wood breathing to carry out about half an hour of recovery treatment for Shinobu Koko. Shinobu Koko fell asleep after finishing the treatment. Ryaji settled Shinobu Koko, and then left the butterfly mansion. 550, Chapter 550. Leaving the butterfly mansion, Ryaji then came to Kyojuro Rengoku and Uzui Tenjin's special ward to help them with recovery treatment. And when he came to the ward, Ryaji saw Uzui Tenjin's 3 wives serving him in the ward. Of course, in order to take care of Kyojuro Rengoku's feelings, one of Uzui Tenjin's 3 wives stood up to take care of Kyojuro Rengoku. Of course, it was just simple care, such as feeding him, and helping him massage his stiff muscles. "Rengoku, you feel it, right? Only when you have a wife serving you do you know how happy it is." Uzui Tenjin asked Kyojuro Rengoku with incomparable pride. "You're right." Kyojuro Rengoku also agreed, and at the same time had the idea of finding a wife. After all, Kyojuro Rengoku had now experienced the meticulous care of one of Uzui Tenjin's wives, and also yearned for a small family. You should find a wife soon. That yellow-haired kid called Zenitsu, that guy has already found one. You, as a senior, are not as good as him in this regard. Uzui Tenjin then said with a chuckle. You're right, in terms of men and women, that guy Zenitsu is still the most powerful. Kyojuro Rengoku also affirmed Zenitsu Agatsuma in this regard. It could be seen from the cheerful atmosphere of Kyojuro Rengoku and Uzui Tengen chatting and spank. The two of them were already fine, although they could not move, it was no problem to bragging and farting. Ryaji's arrival did not change the atmosphere in any way, but seeing that Ryaji had come, they knew that they were about to receive treatment. Uzui Tengen's 3 wives were also very eye-catching, and they all retreated to the side, and brought a stool for Ryaji. It could be seen from the actions of Uzui Tengen's wives that marrying them as wives would definitely be an incomparably happy and enjoyable thing. Ryaji then sat down on the chair, and then began to treat Kyojuro Rengoku without saying anything. Also because Ryaji's treatment was not painful, Kyojuro Rengoku was also taking advantage of this opportunity to chat with Ryaji. Ryaji, how is Tanjiro? Kyojuro Rengoku was most concerned about his adopted son Tanjiro, otherwise he would not have requested to go to the entertainment district to support him. His injuries are fine, but he is still in a coma. The reason for the coma is temporarily unknown, Ryaji then replied. What about that yellow-haired kid called Zenitsu? Uzui Tengen then took this opportunity to ask Ryaji. The situation is similar to Tanjiro, he is also in a coma. Ryaji replied again. That kid is a genius. He can actually use thunderclap and flash to that extent, and use the power of the sky to induce heavenly thunder. After my injuries are healed, I will take him as my adopted son. Uzui Tengen could not help but say with emotion, now he regarded Zenitsu Agatsuma as a treasure. He is quite powerful, but Zenitsu is just a 5-second real man. Hearing Uzui Tengen praise Zenitsu Agatsuma, Ryaji could not help but smile, and then said. Saying that Zenitsu was a 5-second real man was to describe that Zenitsu Agatsuma's thunderclap and flash was very fast, but also because of this, Zenitsu was not suitable for long-term combat. After all, he only knew one move, thunderclap and flash. But I want to remind you, if you want to take him as your adopted son, he is estimated to take advantage of your 3 wives. This guy is the best at taking advantage of girls. Ryaji then kindly reminded Uzui Tengen. Although Zenitsu Agatsuma now had Aoi Kanzaki, he still could not change his nature of taking advantage of girls, but he was much more restrained than before.
Every novel listed in the description comes with permanent access to the audiobook on Telegram. You pay once, and if the novel is still ongoing, you'll receive all future updates automatically. No extra cost. Choose your novel from the description, then DM me on Telegram, WhatsApp, or Discord. After payment via PayPal, Ko-Fi, or Patreon, you'll get instant access. Simple, secure, lifetime listening. Guys, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. Your support means a lot.